Chapter 110 Dance. The scorching summer gradually dissipated. The various Juji in the palace took off their silk clothes, threw away the fans in their hands. Their hairpins changed from jade to other types. There were some palace maids that thought to attract the emperor and put effort into their clothing and ornaments. But as they still had to adhere to the protocols of the palace, they had to put even more effort in. It was a pity that the emperor's entire heart was on the empress body, and no one was able to attract the emperor's attentions. Kuei-Yuan Palace had finished its renovation. The night luminous pearls encrusted in the room had been completely taken off because of His Highness Imperial Sun. Beautiful glass lanterns were put in their place. The whole endeavor had only been due to a careless remark of a certain official of the Ministry of Works who said that it was possible that night luminous pearls were harmful to the body. Everyone knew that night luminous pearls were rare objects. Many people didn't understand why the Empress didn't use them. So very quickly on the outside, many people praised the Empress for being thrifty. Such a beautiful misunderstanding. He Hong felt that he should let it stay beautiful forever. Even though people knew that the Empress was living in Tianqi Palace, which was slightly inappropriate, but the Emperor had said before that the new renovation of Kuei-Yuan Palace wasn't good for newborns. Since it had already passed the 6th month, the good moving day was in the 2nd month of the next year. So in the end, the day that the Empress was to move to Kuei-Yuan Palace was finalized on the 22nd of the 2nd year of Jiayu. Since the Emperor himself had already made the decision, there wasn't anyone at court blind enough to argue. Either way, with how strong the love was between Emperor and Empress, they, as outsiders, would stir dislike from the Emperor if they meddled. Furthermore, the Empress dowagers didn't object, so why would they care? Chu Qingju occasionally would hear some of the rumors from the outside about her. Most of them were about her goddess-like beauty, her generosity, frugalness, and love for the people. Even though she felt that the Empress in the rumors didn't have much of a relation to her, but she knew inside that behind the rumors was He Hong's manipulations in the shadows. She reaped the benefits of He Hong using such tactics to protect her, so she didn't bear to tear down his stage. Occasionally, she would use the position of the Empress to reward some of the kind and famous women in the Delong dynasty. In the 9th month, after her birthday, she even personally rewarded a twice-married woman that saved a few children in a great fire. This woman, because of her 2nd marriage, had been the subject of gossip in the village. But after the handkerchief that Chu Qingju had embroidered with, as brave as any man, she became the most respected matron in the entire county. No one looked down at her again because she had married twice, but became courteous. Chu Qingju never once thought that she had the power to promote change in history, but she wanted to do the things she could. In this world, if a man had a wife and many concubines, he would be praised as romantic, but why couldn't they tolerate a remarried woman? Certain scholars in Delong dynasty, though it was a duty of a woman to not marry twice, but the act of the woman who saved others couldn't be erased. Therefore, not many people jumped out to criticize the Empress' actions as being inappropriate. Even more, what the Empress praised was the woman's act of saving others, not praising her for remarrying. It wouldn't be appropriate for them to object. So this matter calmly passed away. Chu Qingju still acted as the mistress of the Hogong. When bored, she would listen to songs, listen to interesting matters outside of court before picking one or two to praise and reward some things down, then play with her son. Her days were very comfortable. After the Empress Dowagers and Chu Qingju's birthdays had passed, it was He Hong's birthday celebration. Because it was the first birthday after He Hong ascended the throne, even if they wished for the birthday celebration to not be grand, it would still become grand. Disregarding the noble families and officials of the country of Delong itself, even those small subordinate countries on the borders would send envoys to congratulate the new emperor and attend his birthday celebration to express their respect and sincerity to the new emperor. Since Delong dynasty was a strong country, there were many small subordinate countries that relied on Delong. Chu Qingju looked through the tribute that those subordinate countries had sent up to Delong over the years and instantly felt that Delong was very awesome. Something that Chu Qingju found interesting was a small subordinate country called Jing. The present ruler of this country was a female one, and the ones coming to give the tribute this time to Delong were her son and daughter. The reason that she sent both was that she wanted He Hong to decree one of them as the successor to the throne and through her attitude, express the loyalty of the country of Jing to Delong. This feeling of the world coming to rest at De Long's feet really made people feel refreshed all over. He returned to the rear hall and saw that Chu Qingju was still looking at the information of the subordinate countries. When he took a closer look, he found that what she was reading explained some of the customs of the country of Jing. Then he asked, "What's so special about this Jing?" Chu Qingju fanned the papers in her hands. "I heard that Jing's Hogua I princess is amazingly beautiful. Coming to De Long this time, I wonder how many men would she enchant." That's just the Jing people's own opinion. He Heng's tone was slightly disapproving. Jing's territory is high up, so the majority of people's skin are dark-colored, so how beautiful could they be? Compared to our De Long's females, they must be severely lacking. It's all just unfounded rumors to deceive ignorant people. The corners of Chu Qingju's lips jerked. It did seem like that the males of the De Long dynasty did prefer women with white and soft skin. So He Heng's attitude, it really was normal. "What, you don't like this princess?" He assumed that Chu Qingju was worried that he would have an interest in that Jing country princess and assured, "Don't worry, I have no interest in other women. Even more, this Hogwa princess wants to be empress, not our De Long's Feipin." Chu Qingju placed the information on Jing country to a side and snorted, "Emperor, you're thinking too much." I was thinking too much. Don't be angry." He laughed lightly, holding up another stack of information. "You don't need to waste too much effort on these subordinate countries. Like this duo Han. 100 years ago, they frequently robbed and killed our people at the northern border of De Long. In the end, they were soundly defeated by our De Long. They got scared and then obediently gave their allegiance. If they were not obedient, they would get beaten up." Chu Qingju finally realized the attitude De Long held towards those subordinate countries. The main idea was, be docile for me. Listen to what I say, or I'll beat you up, down into the ground. I was just reading through because I was bored. Chu Qingju massaged the back of her neck. Our De Long is so strong. He smiled. Falling behind means getting beaten up. That was the lesson that the previous dynasty taught us. He reached out a hand to gently massage her neck. However, has Qingju forgotten something that was promised to me? What? Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow. She thought that her recent memory was pretty good and hadn't diminished due to her pregnancy. For example, you once said you would dance for me. He reached to grasp that soft waist. I often wonder what Qingju's dancing is like. I said that it depended on your performance. Chu Qingju smiled. Seeing He Heng's letdown expression, she smiled, conceding, all right, looking at your good behavior recently, I'll let you see 3 days later. Wait for Ben Gong. He saw that her eyes were suddenly lit up, and his disappointment all dissolved into a smile. Thanks, Empress, for her grace. What is this? In the evening, Mu Jin saw a palace maid come out with a stack of paper that had ink on it, and became worried that this palace maid was taking out something she shouldn't have. She reached to take the papers and casually scanned. Seeing something about the Hogwa princess was beautiful and skilled in dancing. Her brow furrowed as she asked, "Who let you clean this up?" Mu Jin Jiejie. "It was Nyang who let newbie clean up," the palace maid submissively answered. Mu Jin saw that the palace maid was quite young and seemed quick-witted, so she ripped what was in her hands and rolled it into a ball. "Go and burn it. It's nothing useful." No matter what it was, as long as it was something that came from Yang's place, she always likes for the others to clean it completely. Yes, the young palace maid took over the paper ball and carefully held it in her hands as she left, clearly in a rush to burn it. Still too inexperienced. Mu Jin sighed. Clever, yes, but her actions were still immature. She still needed more training. Entering the room, she saw the Empress was practicing a back bend. She was accustomed to it and went forward, asking, Nyang, Newbie and Jin Zhan has already picked the fabrics. Jin Zhan's skills are better than Newbie, so the clothes will be made by her and Yuzhan. Newbie has also prepared what you asked for. Do you want to see? I'm confident in your abilities, there's no need to make trouble. Chu Qingju smiled as she replied, you just have to finish decorating the Western Hall before tomorrow night according to what I ordered. Newbie knows, Mu Jin didn't ask why the Empress was preparing those things. As a servant, she was very clear to her position and knew what to say or not say. Chu Qingju returned to standing but didn't immediately sit down. only wiping the sweat from her eyes as she ordered, "Send some water in, I want to bathe." After Mu Jin retreated, Chu Qingju walked to the window to look at the parasol tree. She sighed. It had been almost 2 months since that time that He Hung was drunk. Every time she thought about He Heng's discontent and sorrowful expression, she felt that she might have been too ruthless with He Hung. But she always was mind over heart. To lose her mind when interacting with a man, that wasn't her style. What she could do was when the other treated her well, she would treat the other well. If the other had no feelings, then she wouldn't offer herself. If a person disappeared from the world, the sun would still rise. The nights in autumn were cold, but the moon was exceptionally bright. When He Hung finished attending to state matters, he rushed to the rear palace. He still remembered that dance that Chu Qingju had promised him. The result was that when he reached the rear hall, he found it empty. Even Chu Qingju's shadow wasn't seen. "Emperor. Empress invites you to the western hall of Kueyuan Palace." Yin Lu was holding a lantern as she bowed at the doorway. "Please?" He Hung didn't get irritated and was in a good mood as he followed Yin Lu. The rear hall wasn't far from Kueyuan Palace. But what He Hung found unexpected was how exceptionally dark the road was. The only brightness came from the lantern that Yin Lu held. On the lantern was drawn a woman wearing red, flying in the air. When he reached Kueyuan Palace, He Hung saw the tightly closed western hall was lit up brightly. At the door, there were 2 palace maids standing guard. Other than that, he couldn't see anything else. Qian Changxian and the others that had followed after He Hung were curious. What was the Empress up to that was so mysterious? "Emperor, please." Yin Lu smiled as she ushered the other towards the western hall, and then turned back to look at Qian Changxian and the others waiting behind. "You all can wait outside. Other than Zhen's decree, you are not allowed to enter." He Hung waved his hands, indicating he didn't need Yin Lu to lead him, and headed straight for the doors to the hall. Seeing the 2 palace maids at the door bow to him before leaving, the curiosity in his heart grew. What kind of dance would the Empress perform for him? He took a breath and reached to slowly push open the doors to the hall. He only saw that the silk curtains flying in the steam and heat as though it was a paradise. But that wasn't the most attractive thing. The one thing that caught his attention was, on the waters with countless lotus lamps floating in the white jade pool, there was a large flower stage, and in the center of the flower stage, there laid a beauty dressed in an indigo and red dress. Chapter 111. Flying gracefully, the lights in the western hall suddenly extinguished. Only the night luminous pearls on the stage and the flower lanterns floating on the water provided illumination, as though in the world there only existed the woman on the stage. The music of the ancient Qin quietly started, and the person on the flower stage moved. The red sleeves seemed to cut through the dark night, flying in the air like ripples in the water. The flower stage slightly trembled, and the red-clad woman moved with it, suddenly starting to spin as though what was under her feet wasn't the unsteady flower stage floating on the water, but the solid ground. The bells at her ankles rang out in the darkness, striking deep into the soul, again and again striking He Heng's appreciation. Chu Qingju was dressed entirely in red. It was a pure vermilion. No jewelry, no jade. Other than a string of bells on her ankles, she had no adornments on her body. The night wind blew in through the open windows, lifting up the silk curtains in the room, and also the vermilion dress. The flexible waist suddenly stopped, and then a backflip, the red sleeves drawing out a circle in the air. In the blink of an eye, the person was reclining on the flower stage. Flower petals slowly floated down, falling on the steaming water, and creating charm for the amazing dance. At some unknown time, a pipa appeared in Chu Qingju's hands. She slowly stood, her right foot slowly curling, her fingertip gently flicking, her neck slightly raised, like a goddess taking a flight to the heavens. Even though there was a moving smile on her face, but it stirred fear in the onlooker that she would suddenly leave. He Hung couldn't resist walking forward, and saw Chu Qingju's eyes swirl as she started to dance and play the pipa at the same time. After the song ended, a red silk rope suddenly fell down from the top. Chu Qingju wrapped her hand around the rope, and with a push of her feet, she managed to fly off the flower stage in the midst of a rain of flower petals. "Qingju." He Hung pushed aside layers of silk. When he saw the faintly smiling person reclining on the bed, his heart jumped. He muttered. The ancients talked about one dancing the feathered coat and rainbow skirt, with a breeze in her skirts. It's only today that I know what it meant. Chu Qingju turned around, changing to lean on the bed, her eyes bewitching as she asked, "Is Emperor satisfied with my dance?" A dance that overturns the state. He walked next to the bed, reaching to pull out the jade hairpin in her hair, his voice husky as he replied, "To have such a woman, in this life what else do I need to ask for?" The wind started. The sleeves slightly swayed as though it stirred Hang's heart. He couldn't resist gathering Chu Qingju in his embrace. Such scenery, such beauty. His heart was tangled like hair, and there was nothing else that could enter his eyes. The servants all waited outside Kuei-Yuan Palace. No one knew what had happened inside Kuei-Yuan Palace. Some of the attendants that had cooperated with Chu Qingju in her dance had all left when Chu Qingju stopped dancing. The moment the doors to the Western Hall closed, it also closed on the romantic night of the Emperor and Empress. The moonlight was still there, the people were still the same, but to Mu Jin and the group of people waiting outside, if the Emperor hadn't appeared out of the Western Hall now, then it meant that before the sunrise tomorrow morning, the Emperor wouldn't come out. Mu Jin turned to look at the Western Hall. Not just Emperor, even her, a woman, when she saw the Empress in that vermilion costume had been dumbstruck. Perhaps there really were women in this world that might be the most beautiful in the world, but they didn't have the ability to entice others, like Empress did. When Chu Qingju woke up, the sky was turning pale. She looked at the man who was holding her, and reached out to brush aside the strands of hair in front of the face. Two pairs of eyes met, and she found the other was already awake, his eyes incomparably warm. Awake? Reached to brush through Chu Qingju's hair, smiling as he asked, "Call for the servants to come in?" Chu Qingju yawned and looked outside the window through the layers of silk. She lazily leaned her head on Hang's chest. "Don't want to get up?" A beauty in the arms, "I don't want to get up either." Hang's hand gently slid across Chu Qingju's back, and unwillingly and discontentedly sighed. "I finally understand the reason behind. From now, the Emperor will not have morning court. Emperor is willing to be the incapable ruler, but I'm not willing to be that calamitous demoness." Chu Qingju pinched at his waist and got up to throw the red outer garment casually over her body. She flung her head of soft and smooth hair, revealing her pale legs as she walked through layers of silk to enter the hot spring, the red robe spreading out in the water. Dressed, and when he walked next to the water, he saw her swim around in a circle with seductive poses. He turned to grab a large and clean towel, squatting down and reaching with his hands, urging, "Come up, it'll be cold when you get out of the water." Chu Qingju swam in front of him. She looked at the hands he had reached out with, and suddenly pulled, dragging into the water. Ming He and the others that had been waiting outside the hall heard the sound of something landing in the water inside, and then the laughter of the Emperor and Empress. They could only quietly bend down even more and bury their heads even lower. The end result was that managed to arrive at court almost 10 minutes late. But it was such a short gap that no one thought more about it. The only thing that the officials couldn't understand was why the Emperor was in an exceptionally good mood. Even his voice as he decreed to investigate corrupt officials was softer than usual. The officials thought in puzzlement, was the Emperor expectant of the upcoming birthday? At the end of the 9th month, the envoys of the minor countries started to arrive in Jing City. They were placed to live in the visitor palace that was set aside for guests. Even though it was a palace, it wasn't connected with the imperial palace, but was constructed on a certain wide and clean street. That same street was also home to many noble families. After the envoys arrived, they quickly sent their cards to Hung. However, it was the Ministry of Rights officials that saw them. If they wanted to see Hung in person, they had to wait for the birthday celebration. When it was time for the country of Jing to arrive, it caused a portion of the people to gather on the side of the street. They held curiosity for the carriages from another land. Even more, they had heard that a beautiful princess was sitting in the grand carriage. Such alluring gossip, even if they didn't see the person, it was enough to see the carriage. The envoy from Jing was settled down in the Jiaoxiang compound of the visitor's palace. After moving in, the imperial son and princess of Jing and the envoys from other countries mutually exchanged greetings, sought out news about the city of Jing before they returned to their compound. Dai Rong looked at the teacup in her hand, her voice slightly awed. Dalong is so prosperous and glorious. Even a teacup like this would be something in our Jing that everyone would fight over. But here in Dalong, it's just something common. A smile formed on her beautiful face. I heard from others that said that the new emperor is extremely handsome and is a very capable ruler. Also, he doesn't have many women in the Hogong. Such a rare kind of emperor. But I heard that the Empress of Dalong is as beautiful as a goddess, kind-hearted and in love with His Majesty the Emperor. Tu Air seemed to have seen through his Mimi's mind, indifferently playing with a bracelet of agate. It makes one admire. There is no man in this world that doesn't want something new. Dai Rong smiled carelessly, her expression extremely confident. The past emperors of Dalong, they all had many beauties in their Hogong. Tu Air shrugged, and spreading out his hands, he declared, "All right, I won't stop you from whatever you will do. If you make His Majesty the Emperor mad and lose the right to succession, it would be a great event for me. My good Gidge, there isn't a man that would neglect a beautiful woman." Dai Rong's index finger slid across her red lips. "Just wait and see. I will become Jing's greatest empress." "Since you insist on doing so," Tu Air put down the agate bracelet in his hands and spread them, smiling. "I hope you succeed." When he finished, he smiled and walked out of the room, turning to return to his own rooms. "Princess, what does the imperial son mean?" A female attendant behind Dai Ron frowned as she asked, "Would the imperial son try to set you up?" "Don't worry, Gidge isn't so stupid as to fight with me in front of His Majesty the Emperor. That wouldn't be of benefit to Jing's reputation." Dai Rong set down the cup in her hand. "Even more, Mother favors me more. More people are willing to listen to me. If he wanted to scheme against me, he doesn't have many helpers." Thinking about the Empress that Tu Air mentioned, she snorted. Most of the women of Dalong were in the mold of being virtuous. For a time, a man would find it interesting. If they had to always face such a kind of women all the time, it would be strange if they didn't get sick of it. If she could use her beauty to obtain the favor of His Majesty the Emperor, she would get the throne, and also get more benefits for Jing from Dalong. Why shouldn't she do it? So what if there was an empress? Would the emperor remain pure as jade for her? In the rear hall of Tianqi Palace, Chu Qingju was teasing Tun Tun to reach and grab the small drum in her hand. Seeing his head sway about with the drum, and reaching out to grab, she smiled as she pushed the small drum into his hand. Then she saw Tuatu clumsily shove the drum into his mouth. Chu Qingju didn't stop him. Seeing his toothless mouth smear the drum with saliva, she took a handkerchief to wipe his face. Then she reached out to rub his back. Finding that his temperature was normal, she lifted Tuatu up. "Tun Tun, say ma."
"Ah, ma."
"Ah." Seeing Tun Tun smile ignorantly at her, Chu Qingju couldn't resist kissing his face repeatedly. "Tun Tun, tomorrow is your father's birthday, say ma." "It's my birthday. Why should he first call you?" When He Hung came in, he heard the words and helplessly walked in front of his son. He reached out to poke his son's face. Seeing him duck into his Muhu's arms with a dark face, his eyebrow raised as he remarked, "This brat knows how to hide." "Don't poke." Chu Qingju slapped aside his hand. "Rough hands and feet. It'll harm his skin. He's not tofu and can't be touched." He Hung resentfully took his hand back. Seeing Tun Tun reach with his plump hands to lie on Chu Qingju's body, he asked, "Why do I feel that he is much closer to you?" "He lived in my belly for more than 9 months. Chu Qingju shot him a glare. "If you can give birth to a child, he will be close to you." He Hung rubbed his nose. He felt that he couldn't challenge a woman's power and status in this field, and only responded, "It's good that the child is close to you. It means that this child will be a filial one." Finishing, he took the advantage to rub his son's butt. Chu Qingju handed the child to the nursemaid and sat down on the chair with He Hung. She knew that many envoys from subordinate countries were arriving tomorrow and asked, "Have all the envoys arrived?" "All here." Even the one from Duhan managed to arrive 4 days earlier. He Hung thought and then added, "The imperial son and princess from Jing also came." I heard that they caused quite a fuss. Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow, arguing. A beauty's entrance should be grand. He Hung smiled. Then he objected. As a subordinate country, they should act like one. What host would like a loud guest that overwhelms them? Chu Qingju listened to his tone of voice and detected that the envoy from Jing had done something to make him unhappy, so she asked, "What did they do?" "I heard they created a furor when they entered Jing City and then came in a 12-horse carriage." He Heng's brow furrowed. Xindi hasn't yet passed away for 3 years yet, but they are already dancing and singing. They have no sense of propriety. Chu Qingju finally understood. Even though it was already past the mourning period, but it was very likely that when the envoys of the subordinate countries arrived and expressed their allegiance, they certainly expressed their grief at the passing of Xindi. So the country of Jing's behavior was lacking to He Hung. A 12-horse carriage. When He Hung was still a Wang Yi, he could only use an 8-horse carriage. Were the imperial son and princess of the country of Jing even nobler than a Wang Yi of Delong? Didn't the information on the country of Jing say that the Huguo princess was beautiful, good at dancing and singing, and peerlessly intelligent? Why was it that her actions seemed to rub He Hung the wrong way? Or was it that this was the tactic that the Huguo princess was using to attract the new emperor's attention? Such a pity. Regardless of her real intentions, her ploys were being performed in front of blind people. It also made He Hung discontent. It really made people feel sympathy. The feathers coat and rainbow skirt dance originated in the Tang dynasty when Tang Xian Emperor dreamed of going to the palace of heaven and saw the goddesses dance. He took inspiration from that to compose a song and dance suitable to perform in the palace. Later, Yang Guifei was one of those who did the performance. Additionally, the phrase comes from the Song of Everlasting Regret. Chapter 112. The day of the emperor's birthday. All the attendants of the palace made themselves 120% alert. No one dared to slip up. If they managed to mess up in front of their superior, even if they didn't die, they would be torn off half a body of skin. The palace maids and Taijian, under the supervision of the Department of Household Affairs, perfectly arranged everything from clothing to food. Even the Luanhe Hall itself was washed again and again. The white jade steps outside were wiped so clean that even a speck of dirt couldn't be found. Today's weather is really good. A blue-clad Taijian raised his head to look at the sun hanging in the sky, and in a lower voice, said to his partner beside him, "Hey, have you heard yet how beautiful the princess of Jing is? She's planning to present a dance at the banquet." There's nothing strange. His partner used the cloth in his hand to carefully wipe the pillars of the corridor. Just a princess from a minor country. Is she worth you being so curious? I think your brains are made out of a wood. A normal princess. Why would she present a dance out of the blue in front of the emperor? The blue-robed Taijian proclaimed hatefully that one's thoughts aren't simple. Isn't there still the empress? His partner bent to wash clean the rag in a basin. Just a pellet-sized country's princess. There's nothing to gape about. No matter how good a woman is, they can't compare to a new, who is speaking nonsense. A steward Taijian wearing deep blue rippled robes walked over with a group of young Taijian behind him. He pointed expressionlessly at the blue-robed Taijian. "Drag him down, drag him down." Presuming to comment on his juzi, sparing his life will only make other people's lives harder. Before the blue-robed Taijian could beg for mercy, his mouth was stuffed and he was dragged down. His partner was already collapsed on the ground in fear. "You at least know your bounds." The Taijian steward rubbed his hairless chin. He waved his hand. "Continue working. If I hear something I shouldn't hear again, the one just now is the lesson. By that time, don't blame me for not warning everyone." "What's going on here?" Jin Zhan, wearing a water-blue palace dress, saw a Taijian being dragged from far away. When she neared, she found that the Taijian and palace maids present all had abnormal expressions on their faces. She asked, "What did that Taijian do just now?" "Good day, Jin Zhan Gunyang." When the steward Taijian saw Jin Zhan, a smile instantly appeared on his face. He went forward to bow to Jin Zhan. "Does Jin Zhan Gunyang have something to order us to do?" Jin Zhan saw the steward Taijian wasn't willing to speak on the Taijian that had been dragged away and didn't persist. "She opened," the empress said. "Everyone has worked hard. After a little while, everyone can go to the kitchen to receive a bowl of lily porridge to warm up. The weather of the 10th month is cold at night. Thanks to the Empress for her grace, the steward Taijian instantly gave a grateful expression. He made a full bow in the direction of the back end of Tianqi Palace, and then said a few more compliments regarding the Empress before stopping. Jinzhan didn't stay for long. After some polite chit-chat with the steward Taijian, she left. The steward Taijian watched her back and sighed. Right now, the Empress's side was splendid. If he could join in on the Empress side, he wouldn't still be a steward. It was a pity that the people surrounding the Empress were like a metal barrel. It was hard for an average person to even show their face in front of the Empress. Others said that the Empress was kind and generous, but based on his experience of serving more than 20 years in the Hogong, the Empress wasn't a simple person. Earlier, when Changde Fu had fallen, her reputation hadn't been affected but became even better. That wasn't something that any woman could do. Then there was the earlier matter of Han Liangdi's accidental death. Everyone knew that it was caused by the cooperation of Shu Gue Taifei and Ping Kairan. The Empress was only washed of suspicion due to the heavy defenses of Tianqi Palace. But he felt that the matter wasn't that simple. Many people in the Hogong knew that the two Empress Dowagers and Shu Gue Taifei were at odds. After the new emperor ascended the throne, Shu Gue Taifei's people had been cleaned out. It wouldn't have been easy to cooperate with Ping Kairan. Then, who was the person that made it easy for them to act together? The steward Taijian's shoulders trembled. He didn't dare to think further. As a tiny steward, he should obediently fulfill his duties. He already lost his manhood. He didn't want to lose his life as well. Nyang, do you think that this is appropriate? Yuzan and Yin Lu brought out the mirrors and let Chu Qingju gaze at her front and back. They asked cautiously, "Is there any place lacking?" Chu Qingju's index finger lightly swiped over the red flower on her forehead. She smiled, complimenting, "Very beautiful. Yuzan's skills are getting even better." Taking out a phoenix in flight buyao from her jewelry box to insert into her hair, Chu Qingju slowly stood. "The hour is late. Let's go to the main hall to meet the emperor." After He Hung changed his robes, he heard that the servants report that the Empress had arrived. He didn't hesitate and let the servants welcome the Empress in, himself standing in front of the large mirror for a crowd of palace maids and Taijian to attire him. "Greetings to Emperor." Chu Qingju walked behind He Hung and examined him from top to bottom, handsome, with a natural character that all will sigh over. The ancients talked of a pear blossom that suppresses the apple blossoms. The emperor is worthy of this line. The palace attendants in the room, upon hearing the Empress tease the emperor, jumped in fright but didn't dare to show any signs on their face. With a pearl on the side, "I appear like dirt," He Hung wasn't angry hearing the words. Instead, he smiled and turned to look at Chu Qingju dressed in a vermilion floor-length phoenix robe with wide sleeves. "With Qingju here, everything else in the world is nothing?" The palace attendants quietly lowered their heads. So the emperor and empress were playing a game of, "You compliment me, I compliment." As servants, they will act as though they were deaf. The lights of Luan He Hall shone brightly. Those who were able to attend and sit in the hall, scornful all of them, were full of joy, as though it was their birthday. He Yuan sat beneath He Ming, lazily swirling and concentrating on a finely crafted porcelain wine pot. He occasionally took a draw, a slightly sardonic smile on his face. The people sitting here, how many of them were really happy due to the emperor's birthday? It was just a play that everyone knew of, but each person deceived themselves. If they couldn't fake it to others, they still needed to fake it to themselves. "The emperor has arrived. The empress has arrived." He turned to look and saw the emperor and empress holding hands as they walked in from the doorway. One wearing a black robe bordered in red, one wearing a vermilion floor-length dress. The picture was beautiful. The hand he had on the wine cup slightly froze, and then he stood with the others in kneeling to welcome the emperor. Seeing the vermilion dress slide across his eyes, he felt as though something was sliding across his heart, sour and difficult to bear, as though his breath was caught, the suffocation making his head ring. "Everyone rise." He Hung and Chu Qingju held hands as they sat down on the wide two-person chair. With a slight smile, he said, "Just one of Zhen's birthdays. To trouble everyone here, Jin really feels grateful. Everyone hurriedly kowtowed and expressed that the emperor was exaggerating. They really sincerely were happy for the emperor and were loyal, etc., etc. After the officials did the 3 bows and 9 kowtows to congratulate He Hung on his birthday, He Hung bestowed the seats. Then it was the envoys from all the subordinate countries to enter the hall to offer their tributes. Chu Qingju noticed that there was great care in the order the subordinate countries came in. It seemed the earlier the envoys of the countries came in, the more they were favored by He Hung. After 7 or 8 subordinate countries offered their gifts, Chu Qingju finally heard the name that she was interested in. The country of Jing's imperial son Tu heir and Princess Dai Rong for an audience. Summon. Chu Qingju looked with a smile towards the door and saw a male and female wearing clothing of a different culture come in. It seemed that both of them were very young. 2 servants followed behind them. Tu heir and Dai Rong of the country of Jing congratulates His Majesty the Emperor. May you live a long life, and to long be prosperous and flourishing. Dai Rong walked into the center of the hall and gave a local greeting with all her grace. Thinking that her Jing was the second last to enter the hall, she felt dissatisfied. Even a small country like Wei was put in front of her Jing country. The rights officials of Delong might be underestimating them too much. Qianchong Xian looked at the emperor. Seeing the emperor slightly raise his hand, he hollered, "Excused, rise." Thanks to the honored His Majesty the Emperor and Empress. Tu heir also made a bow and stood up together with his sister. He took advantage of his movement to quickly glance at the Empress. He saw a woman who was even younger than his Mimi, wearing a grand robe brighter and redder than a fresh flower. This was the first time he saw a woman more suited than his Mimi to wear a red dress. You two have come such a long distance. Jean is very grateful to the two of you. He Hung raised a hand. Please sit. The honored Your Majesty the Emperor is too polite. To be able to come celebrate your birthday, it is this one and Mimi's great fortune. This one's mother has prepared a birthday gift for Your Majesty the Emperor and hopes that Your Majesty the Emperor will like it. Tu heir turned to take the gift box from the hands of his servant behind him and raised it with both hands. Please, honored Your Majesty the Emperor, take a look. Qianchong Xian walked down the 9 steps of stairs and took the gift box from Tu heir's hands. He first quickly opened it to see if there was any poisonous gas or concealed weapons before bowing and presenting the box with both hands in front of He Hung. He Hung took over the gift box. Inside, there was a mutton fat jade pendant carved into the shape of 2 lotus flowers on the same stalk. He closed the box, remarking, "The ruler of Jing has spent effort. Please sit." Tu heir couldn't see any of He Hung's emotions from his face and could only sit down with his sister. Because of the flutterings in his heart, he didn't even notice what the country of Duo Han that came after them had sent. Since there were birthday wishes from the envoys of subordinate countries, naturally there had to be dances that showed the prosperity of Delong. Many of the envoys, when they saw the beautiful dances of Delong's dancers, forgot to even take up their chopsticks, their faces full of awe. It satisfied many of Delong's officials' vanity. Chu Qingju looked at He Hung beside him and found that his expression was extremely calm, as though the state of the envoys didn't please him. She nodded inside. These envoys might belong to the subordinate countries, but they were all nobility from those countries. None of them would show such their inexperience just because of a dance. It was deliberately pretending to act so ignorant to please the people of Delong. To be able to be an envoy, it required a thick skin. Your country's dance moves one's heart. This little woman wants to show everyone a dance from Jing. Will Your Majesty the Emperor allow it? Like this one, her skin wouldn't be thin. Chu Qingju looked at the Hugua princess dressed in red who had spoken, and the smile on her face grew wider. Chapter 113 The Prosperity Blinds One's Eyes. No one felt surprised by the Princess of Jing's proposal. There were even officials who gave dubious smiles that they thought they hid well, as though they knew what the Princess of Jing was thinking and were waiting to see a good show. A princess of a minor country, giving a dance of her own initiative in front of this many people. No one would believe that she didn't have any ulterior motives. But right now, the Empress was still present. This method that this Princess of Jing took was too straightforward. To try to seduce the emperor in front of the empress, was this because she was confident in her beauty, or just that she didn't have any brains? After He Hong heard the request from the Princess of Jing, he didn't immediately agree, but turned to look at Chu Qingju. It was as though he was asking her if she was interested in the dances of a different culture. Bin Gong has heard that the country of Jing's Hugua Princess Beauty is the most beautiful in the countries and can dance the world's most beautiful dance. Today, seeing the princess, if we cannot see the princess dance in our palace, it would be such a pity. Chu Qingju gave a dignified smile. Please, princess, dance. Dai Rong didn't think that the person who would speak would be the Empress of Dalong, and not His Highness the Emperor. She first froze for a beat before standing and bowing, responding, "Great thanks to the Empress. This little woman will display her meager talents." She took off the boots on her feet and the large robe on her body, revealing a grand attire full of exoticness. When the men and women present saw her actions, they were slightly shocked. But thinking about the cultural differences between countries, they didn't reveal their reactions blatantly. But inside, they couldn't resist comparing this Hugua princess to the dancers. Because in this type of setting, the noblewomen wouldn't lower themselves to display their talents, but would use dancers instead to raise the mood. Also, the most beautiful dance in the world? A pellet-sized country dares to boast so. It was really ignorant and narrow-minded. Chu Qingju looked at the bare arms and flat stomach that Dai Rong showed after she took off her outer robe and smiled slightly as she raised the teacup. Her gaze swept across the Jing country's musicians who had been invited in, and leaned to whisper into He Heng's ear. This princess of Jing's waist looks so enticing, it's like a willow branch. It makes one want to go and touch. What she said was the truth. This Hugua princess might have skin that was slightly tanned. It didn't comply with the sense of beauty of the men of Dalong, but her features were extremely beautiful, and her figure also extremely hot. She was like a very flavorful pepper. Not a necessity, but when one looked, they couldn't stop thinking about wanting to have a taste. He Hong carelessly looked at the woman who was twisting her waist like an eel. He thought back to how Chu Qingju looked when she had been flying dressed in red and laughed lightly in her ear. Compared to Qingju, she's only just so. In his mind, this Hugua princess did have some attractiveness, but it wasn't something that was rare in the world. On the other hand, it was the intangible charm that Chu Qingju showed during her dance that moved his heart. A tasteful woman is like old wine. The more one tasted, the more flavor there was to savor. And not like this kind of strong spirit where there was some taste at first taste, but if more was drank, how was it different from the rot-gut liquor sold on the streets? Dai Rong's movements became even more provocative, like a poisonous viper that unconsciously attracted the gaze of many males. When they looked at her moving waist, there were only two words in their mind, beautiful creature. As the drums beat faster, the bare feet of Dai Rong spun even faster. The second the drums stopped, she made a pose with her hands together and one of her feet slightly curled, as though a seductive goddess suddenly took away all her magic and once again became a noble princess. He Hong had just focused on talking with Chu Qingju and didn't pay any serious attention at all to how this Hugua princess had danced. Seeing her finish, he raised his hand. This dance of the Princess of Jing's truly has a certain style. What do you think, Empress? Emperor is right. Chu Qingju smiled as she followed. The princess is as beautiful as the burning sun. How about Bin Gong gives that red jade hairpin from Bin Gong's stores to the princess? It would really mean that this hairpin won't be neglected. Many thanks to the honored Your Majesty the Emperor and Empress. Dai Rong saw that He Hong didn't seem to be attracted by her dancing. She did feel regretful, but her opinion of He Hong became higher. A man that wasn't easily swayed by beauty, it made her feel that he was more of a challenge than normal men, but it is one of Empress' favored objects. This one can't take away something from the other. The princess is too polite. Qingju smiled faintly as she touched the golden phoenix buyao in her hair. Or does the princess looks down on Bin Gong's hairpin? This one doesn't dare. Dai Rong saw that the Empress didn't have a good expression and hurriedly bowed, replying, "Many thanks for Empress' gift. No need to be polite." Chu Qingju's smile eased. Bin Gong has heard that the queen of your country has been ill lately. Earlier, Bin Gong has heard many of the queen's wise deeds and is very admiring of her. When Imperial Son and Princess return, please give Bin Gong's goodwill to the Queen. Hearing the Empress mention his mother, Tu Air also stood up and stopped beside his Mimi. He respectfully made a bow. Many thanks for Empress' concern. If Mother knows of this matter, she would definitely recover due to happiness. Chu Qingju smiled. Imperial Son is too serious. It does seem that both of you are giants among men. Who is the eldest and youngest? She raised a teacup to sip at the surface of the tea, her tone extremely calm, as though she was only casually asking. Empress, this one is the eldest. Tu Air remembered that he seemed to have called Dai Rong by Mimi in the hall already. Even without the appellation, De Long should have already known who was the eldest already due to their envoy status. But since the Empress was asking it right in front of him, then he could only obediently reply. So that's how it is. Chu Qingju nodded, turning her head to speak to He Hong. Didn't the Queen have a matter for Emperor to decide? Che feels that right now is a good time. All the major officials and the envoys from the countries are here. It's fitting to settle the matter. By this time, everyone present became silent, their gaze flickering between Tu Air and Dai Rong. Even though everyone knew what matter the Empress spoke of, but no one had thought that the Empress would boldly take up the topic. But knowing that the letter had been written by the Jing's queen, it was normal for the Empress to have viewed it. If Empress hadn't mentioned it, Jin would have almost forgot. He Hung naturally didn't need to spend much time on such a small matter. Furthermore, he was partial to Tu Air as the successor. The kind of woman that Dai Rong was had too much ambition. For the Dailong dynasty, it didn't need a subordinate country's ruler to have such great ambitions. Not long ago, the Queen of Jing had sent a letter to Zhen hoping to pick a successor between the two of you. Based on what Zhen has seen, both of you are very able. It really is hard to make a decision. By now, the officials who had received presents from Dai Rong beforehand didn't dare to speak. They weren't dumb. Just now, the Empress had implied that the Imperial Son Tu Air was the elder, and Dai Rong Princess was the younger. If they were so blind to help speak for Dai Rong Princess, wasn't that working against the Empress? Emperor, Imperial Son and Princess are both D, but there is the order of seniority. Wei Chen thinks that Imperial Son Tu Air should be made Crown Prince. The Duke of Zhongyi stood and raised his hands in a fist, declaring, if none of the heirs have done anything wrong, the best choice is the eldest among the D. Once the Duke of Zhongyi's words came out, many of the senior officials came out to second it. None of them abandoned their standpoint just because Dai Rong was a gorgeous woman. Since that is the case, Zhan will title Imperial Son Tu Air as the Crown Prince, and write an imperial decree for the envoys to take back to Jing to read. He Hung lowered his head slightly, revealing an approving expression. Since the matter is settled, the banquet will continue. Dai Rong didn't think that the position of Crown Princess would slip away so silently. Before coming here, Mother had clearly implied that the Emperor of De Long favored her, but at this time, she couldn't see any sign of protection from the Emperor. She was the most favored and popular princess of Jing. Even her mother had used Hu Guo as her title. But why did His Majesty the Emperor turn away and establish her Gij? Tu Air didn't think that the position of Crown Prince would come so suddenly. He first dropped in a daze for a few seconds before remembering to kneel and give thanks. He didn't know if he was thinking too much, but he felt that if the Empress hadn't said what she had just said, maybe this position of Crown Prince wouldn't have been delegated to him. But why did the Empress help him? He suddenly stared with a complicated expression at his Mimi, who was kneeling beside him. He had heard that Empress of De Long was very appreciative of able women. If Mimi hadn't given this dance and became slightly close with the Empress, would he have what he did now? Earlier, he had said that Mimi would use the wrong methods, but she persisted in believing that all the women of De Long were gentle and virtuous. Why didn't she think? Even the women of Jing had many different personalities. So how about the vast and abundant De Long? Where in this world would there be women who were all the same? Mimi had lost because she was too egotistical and overconfident. She didn't believe in the sincerity of the feelings between the Emperor and Empress. But this imperial couple before them, they were not what she had expected. Perhaps this is the so-called fate? Even as the birthday banquet finished, Dai Rong Princess still hadn't recovered from the blow of losing her position as successor. When the banquet had ended, and she had walked out of Luan He Hall to feel the cold wind and saw the exploding fireworks in the sky, she finally slowly woke up. She really failed. Gij already became the successor recognized by the Emperor of Delong. What was the use of a princess who couldn't succeed the throne? After returning to the country, she could only find a Fuma, and then have children, and then slowly age away in the princess Fu. Those kind of days were too scary. She wanted to be the high-up queen. If she couldn't be queen, wouldn't the pride she had before become a joke? Raising her head, she saw the blinding fireworks. She had heard that it wasn't difficult to make this kind of fireworks, but the crucial step was the dosage used. Her country couldn't produce it, so they had to spend much wealth buying it from DeLong. So unless it was an important occasion, they wouldn't use such valuable objects and couldn't have such a show of such duration like DeLong. It was just a birthday of an emperor, yet they would have a fireworks show for this long. By now, the banquet attendees had dispersed, but they still continued to set them off, as though those things were worthless, that even a child on the street could light one and play. A prosperous and flourishing DeLong, a poor Jing. Dairong princess steps paused. She turned to look at the majestic and luxurious Luan He Hall. Even the jade steps and pillars outside the hall were so tasteful and extraordinary. Then how lavish were the days of the women who lived in the imperial palace. Not far away, a procession held beautiful lanterns as they escorted an unbelievably beautiful phoenix carriage. Following behind the carriage were pretty palace maids dressed finely. Such an extravagant scene made her slightly dazed. She couldn't resist asking a guard outside the Luan He Hall, who was sitting in that beautiful carriage. The guard saw that it was a princess of a subordinate country and politely answered, "That is the phoenix carriage of the empress." Because the empress had already left with the emperor, so most of the phoenix carriage's attendants have left together with the imperial carriage. This kind of procession when there was no one inside? Dairong princess felt astonishment. If the empress was sitting inside, then how grand would the scene be? Was this the life inside the imperial palace of Delong? No wonder Mother had always talked about how rich and prosperous Delong was. She had thought it was just Mother exaggerating. Coming to Delong personally, she finally knew that the actual Delong was even more prosperous and marvelous than her mother had said. She watched dazedly as the phoenix carriage proceeded further away, and couldn't help but falling into a trance. If she could also live this kind of luxurious life in the future, it would be wonderful. Right now, she couldn't become the future ruler of Jing. But if she could become an imperial fae in Delong and live such a sumptuous life, it also wasn't a bad choice. Didn't they say that the women the emperor of Delong favored were even more honored than the empress? If she could become that woman that was even more honored than the empress, by then, would she still have to send gifts to flatter the minor officials of Delong? The throne of Jing wasn't anything. Even if Gij became king, when he met her, he would still have to bow to her. Moreover, even the empress wouldn't dare to use such a proud attitude towards her. Chapter 114 I Am Yours. The incident of the Princess of Jing giving a dance at the birthday banquet very quickly spread throughout Jing. Many people who liked to gossip began to speculate on how was the princess dance, how beautiful she was. There were even people who started to say that the emperor was going to take the princess into the Hogong. The people of Jing had seen many things and naturally guessed that the Jing princess hadn't simply offered a dance. Rather, she wanted to display herself in front of the emperor. A woman trying hard to show off her attributes in front of another man. If she didn't have any other motives, it was a bit suspicious. At one time, the rumors about the princess from Jing increased. Some said that they saw the Jing princess buying jewelry at certain stores and then incense at another store. All of the rumors had one similarity. The princess of Jing was very beautiful and could steal a soul with a glance. The rumors became stronger and stronger. It gradually became how devastatingly beautiful Dai Rong princess of Jing was, and how in love she was with the emperor. But the emperor was obstructed by the empress and had to painfully stop himself from taking Dai Rong princess into the Hogong. The empress had already been married for 2 or 3 years to the emperor. She even had a child, but she really was too overbearing by occupying the emperor and not allowing him to take other fae. Some men felt that the empress wasn't virtuous enough. Other women had slightly sour hearts and said the empress wasn't generous enough. By the end, Dairong Princess became that innocent and beloved woman, and the empress was the evil wife who used her position to bully the princess. When the rumors from outside passed into Chu Qingju's ears, she was playing with Tun Tun and his small drum. When she finished hearing Huang Yang's report, her face held mirth as she remarked, "Such a good story. When did the emperor take pity on this beauty that is Dairong Princess, and when did he have to endure abandoning her?" When the room heard the words, the people all held their breath as they stood, afraid that the empress would get angry. The emperor is master of Dalong. He doesn't need to hesitate if he wants to take a woman. Control the court, balance the Hogong? Chu Qingju sneered. Only a useless emperor will rely on women to govern the court. Ben Gong thinks that the people who spread these rumors have ulterior motives. An unfounded rumor, but it affected both the court and the Hogong. Even some of the senior officials that He Hung placed importance were involved in the rumor. Those senior officials became the rebellious officials who had taken control of the court, and herself, the empress, was the mastermind in the shadows, while He Hung was the trapped and suffering emperor. There were many noble families in Jing. Usually when something happened, there were many different versions, yet this time, all of the rumors were so similar, so it meant that someone certainly was manipulating them in the background. The main targets were her and Zheng Yigong Fu. If He Hung felt even a hint of dislike for her, then when the rumors streamed into his ear, that bit of dislike would become a lot. The tactic wasn't clever, but very useful. It ruined her reputation, affected the reputations of the strong officials in court, and was also involved the subordinate countries. Right now, the envoys from all the superior countries were still in Jing. If this Dairong princess returned peacefully and safely to the country of Jing like this, what would the envoys of the subordinate think? Thinking all this, Chu Qingju frowned. She watched as Tun Tun's fat hands finally grabbed the rattle drum and laughed because of the sounds he made. Her brow steadily smoothed out, and as she rubbed Tun Tun's face, she said, "Since there are so many rumors, let's make them even livelier." Huang Yin hesitated. Nyang means two. Right now, there are suddenly rumors spreading around Jing, and it happened just after Emperor's birthday. Is it that people are deliberately spreading rumors? This kind of movement will shake the support of Dalong itself. It is too terrifying. Chu Qingju sighed. As a citizen of Dalong, I really feel hatred for this kind of person. When Huang Yin heard the words, his eyes lit up, and he instantly responded, "Nu Kai understands." Half a day later, some of the people in Jing became suspicious. Everyone knew how virtuous and kind the empress was, and how deep her love was with the emperor. The emperor had even written on the coronation decree that the empress was a blessing from the heavens. How was it that after just a few days, it became the empress was jealous, and the emperor and empress were only pretending to be together and weren't really in love? And as for the officials who had been harmed by the rumors, they all had done good things for the public. How did they all become rebels? Was it those people with ulterior motives that deliberately spread those rumors, wanting to harm the empress and the other upright and honorable Darren? Then who was the person manipulating the rumors? Were they enemies of Dalong, or traitors to Dalong itself? The city of Jing never lacked for intelligent people. The stronger the original rumors became, the more they felt suspicious. When the speculation came out, they threw out many suspects, such as traitors, people from the subordinate countries, Dairong princess who wanted to enter the Hogong, the Qin family who was at odds with the empress, and the brothers of the emperor. Slowly, more and more people began to doubt the past rumors and started to feel righteous indignation. They started to roll up their sleeves to find the true mastermind. As to whether they were really angry or just wanting to get in on the fuss, it depended on what each spectator thought. In the imperial study, He Hung looked at the major officials under him. They were all the rebel officials who had been in cahoots with the empress in the rumors. Thinking about the ridiculous rumors, He Hung smiled as he comforted. "Aiqing doesn't have to blame yourselves. Jin never cares about this kind of false rumors. Jin has eyes to see what kind of people you all really are, and won't just listen to the rumors." Tianjin stepped forward with a grave face. He raised his hands in a greeting as he responded, It's Chun who is useless and has caused these kind of rumors to spread, harming the reputations of Emperor and the Empress. Please, Emperor, punish us. He was the junior justice of the Supreme Court. Even though he didn't have a direct connection with the matter, there was still some related points. Commander's son of the Imperial Guards felt his heart shrink. As one of the traitorous officials who cooperated with the Empress, he wasn't just a target of the rumors. It was possible that he would be punished by the Emperor because he didn't manage to stop the rumors in time. When Tian Jinku had asked for punishment, he knelt down preemptively. He was directly connected to the matter. Jean has already said that Iching doesn't have to blame yourselves. He stood from the imperial table and personally helped them back up. You are all pillars of the country. Jean is still hoping that you can do more things for DeLong, and won't punish you for such a trivial matter. The hearts of the people presents warmed. To be able to have such a wise ruler as the Emperor, it really was their good fortune as officials and subjects. For the moment, many of the old men's eyes were filled with tears, and they all knelt down to thank the Emperor for his benevolence. Inside, they became even more resolute that they had to clear up the matter. Even though it became a minor matter due to the trust of the Emperor, they wouldn't tolerate this happening again. The only thing that Jean is extremely worried about is that the Empress, originally a virtuous person, has been falsely accused by people with malicious aims. He sighed. Darren must all thoroughly and diligently find out the mastermind behind the scenes to restore justice for Iching and the Empress. Emperor, please don't worry. Chun will thoroughly investigate this matter. Commander Sun bowed as he responded. By now, many people in Jing have already noticed the malicious aims of the villain in the shadows. Not many people still believe the rumors. The virtuousness and kindness of the Empress will not be stained by others. Luo Chongqing raised an eyebrow at Commander Sunday, who said that soldiers had no brains. Look how well this one flattered. He raised his head to peek at the Emperor and, as expected, saw that the Emperor's smile had grown wider. He went forward a step, interjecting, by now, many people in Jing are suspicious of the Princess of Jing, Duo Han, and the Wang Yi. Wei Chen thinks due to how generous Emperor has been to the Wang Yi, they wouldn't have done such distasteful things. Luo Chongqing dared to say this because, 1. The rumors were not beneficial to the solidarity of the imperial house, and 2. Because his granddaughter was married to Qing Wang. But no matter what, his suggestion wasn't wrong. He nodded, agreeing. Zhen's brothers are all honest people. Zhen believes that they aren't that kind of people. Not long after the Darren left the imperial study, many of the people in Jing knew of the words the Emperor had said, and were deeply moved by the depth of friendship with which the Emperor treated the Wang Yi. They also felt if the Wang Yi weren't loyal to the Emperor, then they were really cruel and unscrupulous people. In Chengwang Fu, Himing finally breathed a sigh of relief when he finished hearing the servant's report. He walked into the room of the Wang Fei who was in her confinement period. Seeing that she was holding their child, he smiled and asked, "Is Wanger still asleep?" Luo Wenyao saw him coming in with a smile and gave the child to his nursemaid. Did something good happen? Himing faithfully narrated the events and sighed at the end. Emperor and Empress treat us so well, but I am limited in what I can do for Emperor. Wang Yi and the Emperor are blood brothers. Feelings cannot be calculated like this. Luo Wenyao urged. A few days ago, Mu Jin, one of the Empress attendants, had specially come to visit Xie and told me a lot of things. Is this because the Empress expects Xie to pay her back for all of this? I had thought too narrow-mindedly. He Ming went forward to hug her, not caring about the unclean state she was in due to her confinement. He said ruefully, "With Yao Yao here, I don't feel sad at all." Luo Wenyao laughed quietly, the happiness on her face clear for all to see. She had the fidelity of her husband and a son. What reason did she have to not be happy? In the rear hall of Tianqi Palace, Chu Qingju took down her hairpins and jewelry. Rubbing her shoulders, she said, "The days are getting colder." Jin Zhan and Yu Zhan sorted the hairpins and jewelry to be placed away in their boxes. Mu Jin used a rhinoceros horn comb to brush Chu Qingju's hair. Hearing that, she replied, "It's already deep autumn. The weather always changes quickly now." That's so true. Winter is almost here. Chu Qingju curled her lips. I heard that the winters of the country of Jing are especially harsh. Once it enters the winter months, it's all wrapped in silver silk. I wonder what it looks like. The country of Jing is a poor place. When it's winter, the people don't have good days. Mu Jing's hands were brushing her hair at a perfect pace. She smiled, saying, "Newbie doesn't know much, but feels if the people of the country of Jing saw the prosperity of our Delong, they wouldn't want to leave." Really? Chu Qingju took off the jade bangle on her wrist and suddenly smiled, declaring, "Not willing to leave, then they should stay here." Mu Jin's hands stilled. She didn't know what the Empress meant. Hesitating, she asked, "Why's who'd such people stay here? Wouldn't it make more trouble for others?" "Peaceful days will make people forget the beauty of the past." Chu Qingju smiled. "Remaining doesn't have to be a good thing. You have to know that the prosperity of others doesn't have to be yours. You dare to scheme against others, then you have to know that others will scheme back." When he arrived at the rear hall, Chu Qingju had already changed into her sleep robes and was leaning on the bed as she read. He furrowed his brows, going forward to reproach. "Reading so late, it'll harm the eyes." Chu Qingju closed the book in her hands. She smiled, answering, "Just bored, waiting for you to come back to sleep." Just those words were enough to make He Heng's heart move. He took off his own clothing and made a feast of the beauty. Afterward, the two of them lay in satisfaction on the bed, Chu Qingju on He Heng's chest. "I saw that your mood hasn't been well these few days. Is it because of those words outside the palace? It's just rumors. When the people get bored, they won't pass it on anymore. It's not worth it to be affected by those things." "For whom am I getting angry on behalf of?" He Heng smiled helplessly. "The rumors are targeted towards you. I can't not be angry. These people are targeting me. That means that they hate me inside." Chu Qingju smiled, replying, "Only daring to attack from the back. It means that there are many things these people have to consider. Why should I care for such people?" "Well, look how clearly you think." He Heng smiled. Then suddenly his tone turned cold. "I have already found the people in the shadows." Chu Qingju stared with wide eyes at him, looking curious. "Who are they?" "The Qin family and the princess from Jing." He Heng sneered. "That these people from two sides can work together. They really have skill." Chu Qingju stared blankly and then hummed. "I just knew that Dai Rong princess is interested in you. To do such things for you, she really is in love." "In love after just one meeting?" He Heng gathered her in his arms. "Don't accuse me wrongly. What she's in love with is my position, not me. I'm innocent." The tips of Chu Qingju's feet stroked on the front of his feet. "Regardless, this Dai Rong princess is interested in you. But why is the Qin family meddling in this matter?" He Heng sighed helplessly. "Did you forget that the Qin family wanted to send someone into the Hogong?" Chu Qingju displayed an expression of realization. A beat later, she teased, "If you were just a Wang Yi, there wouldn't be this many women looking at you." Even though he was happy at the possessiveness his woman had towards him, the words just didn't seem right. Was it only his position that attracted others? No, that's not right. Even if you are a Wang Yi, there would be many women looking at you. Chu Qingju's brow furrowed as she mused. "Really want to lock you up and not let anybody else see you." This complaint made He Heng's heart beat faster. He flipped to push her under him, gently kissing Chu Qingju's ear. "I, originally, am yours." Chu Qingju's eyes stared at his. Seeing his two eyes filled with emotion, she reached around his neck. You are mine." /N. Chapter 115. A liberal culture. Waking up in the morning, Chu Qingju looked beside her. The space had become empty, the light coming in through the windows. She rubbed her forehead as she got up. It seemed to be late in the morning. The palace attendants waiting outside heard the noise from inside and quickly came in with the washing tools. They served her to get out of bed and change. After everything was prepared, she then sat in front of the table to sedately eat the morning meal. Mu Jing, how many days until Cheng Wangfei's confinement ends? When the child was 1 month old, they would have a month-old banquet. She didn't need to personally go, but it would be good to prepare what she needed to give. About 10 more days. Is Nyang worried about what to give for the month-old banquet? Mu Jian handed over a handkerchief for Chu Qingju to wipe her hands, and then a lotion for Chu Qingju to rub on. After entering autumn, the wind became stronger. If the hands weren't taken care of, they wouldn't look good after a few days. Chu Qingju rubbed her hands against each other and sighed. The wives of the noble families. This back and forth isn't something easy. Any other person, I can hand off for someone else to do, but not Cheng Wangfei. Thinking some more, she eventually had them prepare things that would help a woman recover and things that infants could use. For other people, she only had to give things that looked good. But she and Luo Wenyao had some feelings between them, so she naturally had to repay her for her sincerity. Today's weather is good to take a walk. Chu Qingju thought for a second. Let the nursemaid take His Highness Imperial Son out to walk as well. Mu Jin hurriedly let the others prepare. She saw that the Empress' expression didn't seem right and couldn't resist asking, Nyang, should the phoenix carriage be prepared? No need, we'll just walk outside. Chu Qingju stood to walk to the door. The warm sunlight spilled onto her body, making her dazed for an instant. She raised her head to look at the sky and turned back and saw that the nursemaid had already carried Tun Tun over. Smiling, she said, "Let's go." When the Empress set out, even though there wasn't a troop of servants before and after her, there were still many attendants that followed. Even more, there were quite a few servants that were there to take care of Tun Tun. Chu Qingju walked over the white jade bridge over the lotus pond and entered the imperial gardens. Looking at the blooming chrysanthemums, she suddenly realized that autumn had really arrived. Passing by a pavilion, Chu Qingju stopped walking. She turned back to look at that pavilion in the midst of the flowers, asking with a raised eyebrow, "Winter last year, didn't Han Liangdi sing there for the emperor?" Mu Jin didn't know why the Empress would suddenly mention Han Liangdi. She looked at the pavilion, nodding. Nyang, what is it? Nothing, Chu Qingju sighed, seemingly in regret, just rueful. Almost a year has passed in the blink of an eye. Time passes so quickly. Nyang doesn't have to think about these things. Mu Jin smiled as she supported Chu Qingju's wrist. Newbie heard the black chrysanthemums over there have flowered well. Do you want to see? No, Tun Tun is still little. It's not good to be too close to the flowers. Chu Qingju pointed to a stone table near a fake mountain not far away. Let's go sit there. We can also soak in some sun. Tea and pastries quickly were put on the stone table. A soft cushion was put on the stone bench. Chu Qingju sat down on the bench. Seeing Tun Tun looked around at the surroundings with wide eyes, she knew that he was curious about the outside scenery, so she let the nursemaid carry him to see the surroundings. Listening to his happy cries, she couldn't resist laughing. Children are just children. Anything can make them happy. His Highness is clever. Mu Jin put out a cup of hot tea for Chu Qingju, then turned to give a handbell to His Highness the Imperial Son. Seeing him happily grasp the handbell, she remarked happily, His Highness grips it so steadily and can wave it around. He really has strong wrists. Almost half a year old, it isn't strange that he can grasp things. Chu Qingju smiled as she informed, not long from now he should be able to crawl. Mu Jin smiled as she bowed. Nyang, don't laugh at Newbie for making a fuss. Newbie thinks anything that His Highness does is good. Chu Qingju laughed at her words. When she turned her head, she saw a procession that surprised her. She asked with a furrowed brow, "What is going on there?" Mu Jin looked into the distance and saw Ming He leading some womenfolk around the imperial gardens. Most of the womenfolk were the foreign of the envoys of the subordinate countries, but the princess from the country of Jing was also among them. Newbie will go ask. Mu Jin bowed and turned to walk in the direction of Ming He and the others. Because several of the foreign of the officials and the princess had looked forward to seeing the imperial gardens of Delong, Ming He had to, under the imperial order, serve them to tour the imperial gardens. But thinking about the rumors from outside about the princess of Jing and the empress, his heart was bitter. If the empress saw, he didn't know what would happen. Just when he was thinking it inside, he saw Mu Jin coming over when he raised his head. He sighed inside, but forced a smile onto his face. He went forward a few steps, exchanging bows with Mu Jin. Where is Mu Jin Gunyang coming from? The Empress can't be without your service. Ming He Gonggong is exaggerating. Mu Jin smiled and looked at the womenfolk behind him. She gave a shallow bow. Newbie Mu Jin greets everyone. These women might not have recognized Mu Jin, but all knew that there was a high-ranked palace maid called Mu Jin that was especially favored by the Empress. Additionally, when they saw that Ming He's attitude towards Mu Jin was especially friendly, they were certain to Mu Jin's identity. Then they all gave slight smiles and exchanged some pleasantries with Mu Jin using their basic knowledge of Dalong language. Because all the foreign has never toured the imperial gardens, so Nukai has been ordered by the emperor to accompany the foreign to walk the garden, Ming He said with a faint smile. Didn't think to encounter Mu Jin Gunyang. Nyang is drinking tea up front. She saw you leading the women into the garden, so she let newbie come ask. Mu Jin's gaze swept in the direction of the Princess of Jing, her smile not changing as she responded, since Gonggong is busy, I won't disturb any further. It seems that the emperor didn't think much of the foreign of the envoys. Otherwise the one receiving them wouldn't be Ming He. At the very least, it would be a noblewoman of some significant status, or a foreign from the imperial house. Since the empress is here, we should greet the empress, the foreign of the envoy from Dongyu said in a respectful tone. If it wasn't that the Hugua princess that especially asked, we wouldn't have the good fortune to enter the palace for a tour. To greet the empress, it is our good fortune. Mu Jin smiled as she looked at the Dongyu envoy's foreign. This envoy's wife said what seemed to be a normal and casual sentence, but in reality it was expressing goodwill towards the empress. She followed with a smile, answering, Newbie doesn't dare to make a decision. Please, honored guest, wait for Newbie to inform the empress. Watching Mu Jin walk towards the fake mountain in the front, Dairong couldn't help looking more at the fake mountain. When her movements were spotted by Ming He's eyes, he thought scornfully, country ignoramuses are country ignoramuses. Just this kind of scheming, any palace made in the Hogong is stronger than her. It seems that the country of Jing was one generation worse than the previous. When Chu Qingju heard Mu Jin's report, her brow slightly furrowed. A special request from the Princess of Jing? Having said that, she couldn't resist snorting. It seems that she is exceptionally interested in our Dalong's Hogong. All right, let them come. Ben Gong wants to get to know this Princess of Jing. She looked at Tun Tun, who was still playing with the handbell, and said to the nursemaids, Take Tun Tun back to the rear hall of Tianqi Palace. Don't let anyone casually near His Highness. The nursemaids obediently left, not even turning to look back. Hearing that the Empress was willing to see them, the wives of the envoys all gave smiles. They were highly ranked in their own countries, but compared with the noblewomen of Dalong, they weren't really anything. Once they came to the city of Jing, they carefully managed their speech and conduct. Whenever they met a noblewoman from one of the noble families, they were extremely courteous. The fact that the Empress was willing to meet them, it was a happy, unexpected occurrence. The procession followed in Mu Jin's footsteps next to the fake mountain when they saw a woman dressed in a white floor-length dress embroidered with red flowers lazily sitting on the stone table. Her black hair was restrained in a beautiful and exquisite fide-inji. All of her hair ornaments and jewelry were finely made. But what made them lose their focus the most wasn't the grand decorations, but the Empress' own composure and beauty. Just a glance was enough to make them feel inferior, but at the same time, they felt it was appropriate that the Empress of Dalong should be this noble and beautiful, that it was natural that they couldn't compete with the Empress. When they saw the Empress, they couldn't find any jealousy, only admiration and reverence. Chunfu is the foreign of Dongyu's prime minister. Greets the honored Empress. The womenfolk came up one by one to pay their respects to Chu Qingju. They all gave the full greetings of their own countries. Before their arrival, Chu Qingju had learned a basic understanding of their customs and politely allowed the womenfolk to take a seat. The country of Jing's Dairong greets the honored Empress. This was the first time that Dairong saw the Empress at such a close distance. She examined Chu Qingju from top to bottom. Even though she wasn't willing, she still had to admit that this Empress was somewhat beautiful. Hugua Princess doesn't have to be this courteous. Chu Qingju indicated for her to sit. Ben Gong remembers you. Your dance in Luan He Hall was very beautiful. Didn't think that Empress would remember this one. This one isn't worthy. Dai Rong's face was full of bashfulness. coming to the imperial gardens for the first time and being able to encounter Empress. It really is our great fortune. You all like to mention fortune, but Ben Gong feels that it is destiny. Chu Qingju smiled as she raised a teacup. Everyone, come taste our DeLong's tea. It isn't anything rare, but the taste is still good. DeLong's tea is worth 1,000 gold in our countries. It is very valuable. The foreign of the envoy from Dongyu smiled as she took a drink. The tea that the Empress has, it really is a rare and seldom one. If you like it, when you return, take some back. Chu Qingju smiled as she responded. Coming from so far away to celebrate Emperor's birthday, it must have been hard. His Majesty the Emperor is brave and outstanding. To celebrate His Highness the Emperor's birthday, there is no hardship. Dai Rong put down the teacup, smiling and said, His Majesty the Emperor is a god in my country of Jing. All the people of Jing would never find it hard for our gods. Ah, Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow at Dai Rong. Then all of Jing is full of loyalty for my DeLong, of course. My Jing's heart towards DeLong is like shining like the sun and moon. Dai Rong's eyes met Chu Qingju's. This one believes that the honored His Majesty Jia you will be one of those wise rulers seen once in 1,000 years. The two's eyes met in the air. Chu Qingju found that the other had a pair of beautiful eyes. She gave a faint smile. As the Empress of DeLong, I'm very grateful for the loyalty that the people of Jing feels towards DeLong. Derong followed. So, as the Hugua Princess of Jing, I'm willing, for the honored His Majesty Jiayu Emperor, to become his fei. Chu Qingju laughed out loud. She had heard that the culture of country of Jing was extremely liberal, and the relationships between men and women were relaxed. Hearing Dai Rong's words today, she finally understood what a liberal culture was like. Chapter 116. A heavy blow. The words of Dai Rong shocked many people, especially Ming He. He felt his legs weaken. If he had known that this Hugua princess was this bold, today, he wouldn't have done this. If the Empress thought that he had deliberately ushered the person in front of her, then would he have any more good days to live? The foreign of Dongyu's envoy stared with shock and wide eyes. She used the teacup to conceal her open mouth. She couldn't resist looking at the Empress. How would the Empress resolve this matter? Chu Qingju was slightly surprised at the actions of Dai Rong to recommend herself into the Emperor's bed, but she quickly calmed down. She had heard before about the liberal nature of the country of Jing. Even though she hadn't thought that this Dai Rong princess would speak so blankly of the matter, but it wasn't as though she would lose her composure due to it. Elegantly putting down the teacup in her hands, she used a handkerchief embroidered with a beautiful design to wipe her lips. Where does the princess words come from? If you are in love with the Emperor, why not tell him? Instead of telling Ben Gong? This one heard that the Empress of DeLong has the power to manage the Hogong. Then the expansion of the Hogong should be your duty. This one telling you of the matter, it should meet protocol. Dai Rong princess stood from the bench and gave a full bow in the style of DeLong to Chu Qingju. Dai Rong sincerely is in love with the Emperor and begs Empress to fulfill this request. Dai Rong's actions were nothing but forcing the Empress to admit her position. At the side, Yin Lu and the others were gritting their teeth, but due to their status, they stood quietly at the side. The other foreign of the envoys from subordinate countries felt awkward inside. Many of them had heard the rumors from before, but knew very well how suspicious the rumors were. But they hadn't thought that this Dai Rong princess actually had an interest in His Majesty the Emperor of DeLong. Right now, they regretted coming with Dai Rong princess to tour the gardens. Such an incident as this, they didn't know what expression was appropriate for this situation. Dai Rong princess isn't wrong. Ben Gong has the power to expand the Hogong. Chu Qingju smiled as she stood, looking from up high down at Dai Rong bent in front of her. But Ben Gong is Emperor's wife, and naturally cannot neglect Emperor's wishes and randomly take other women into the palace. If Princess truly is in love with the Emperor, you should confess to Emperor. If Emperor is willing to take you into the palace, Ben Gong naturally is happy for the palace to have another woman to serve the Emperor. Dai Rong didn't think the Empress would push the matter to His Majesty the Emperor. After a slight pause, she said, If that's the case, then please, Empress, Act on behalf of this one to express this true love to the emperor. This one will thank Empress here and now. Finishing, she lifted her skirts and knelt. Even more, she put out a posture of prostration. Ming He saw the princess of Jing's almost wretched-like actions and looked undetectably at the empress. Right now, the emperor should be leaving court. He didn't know if Xiaoganzi would manage to lead the emperor over. If this matter wasn't solved correctly, it would blow up. Thankfully, the conduct of the empress was steady and dependable. If one step was wrong, right, if it is sincere, then why let others tell about it? Wouldn't that tarnish that true feeling? Chu Qingju went forward a few steps, reached a hand in front of Derong, and smiled widely. Princess, please get up. The country of Jing might be a subordinate country of Delong, but you are still a princess of a country. How can you give such a big greeting to Ben Gong? When the foreign of Dongyu's envoy heard it, she felt embarrassed on behalf of Dairong. The empress' words mocked her for lowering her status and being shameless. A princess, regardless of how small the country was, it was still a country. Her conduct represented the country. Right now, she was kneeling and begging just so she could enter the Hogong of Delong to become a Feipine. If the Queen of Jing knew of the conduct, what would she think? Dairong had a high opinion of herself, but she wasn't stupid. Naturally, she heard the implication in Chu Qingju's words. Looking at the hand that the other offered to her, she said in a respectful tone, "Don't dare to trouble Empress." And then she stood. She sighed somewhat tragically. This one is a woman. When would there be a time to meet the honored His Majesty the Emperor? It's just a futile hope to expect to accompany him. Princess has only seen the Emperor only a few times, but lost her heart. It really is deep love, and Ben Gong is very shocked. Chu Qingju's face gave a few hints of mirth, was scornful yet proud. If that's the case, why don't Ben Gong give you a chance for you to tell of your desires to the Emperor? When she finished speaking, her eyes looked towards the side of the fake mountain. There, standing, was he hung dressed in the black dragon robes. The other's face was so calm, it was scary. Dairong seemed to detect that someone was behind her. When she turned to look, she hadn't thought it was the Emperor. She first stilled and then reacted, given a sweet smile and a graceful bow. "Greetings to the honored Your Majesty the Emperor." The other foreign of the envoys all followed in standing and making their bows. They were all married women and naturally knew how to read expressions. So it only took just a rough glance and they were able to see that the Emperor's expression wasn't too good and seemed to be indistinctly angry. The atmosphere seemed to return back to when Dairong Princess recommended herself as a Feipine. He Hong walked to sit down next to Chu Qingju. He glanced at the Princess of Jing dressed seductively and said in a heavy tone, "Foreign, please rise." Dairong, who had been preparing to stand, swayed in her place. She hesitated, but in the end still maintained her posture in greeting. He Hung didn't seem to have seen her, and exchanged a few words with the foreign of the envoys before become silent and only drinking tea on the side. The envoys foreign didn't know whether they should leave or sit at this time. They furtively looked at the Princess of Jing who was still locked in her position and didn't dare to breathe. They were all minor subordinate countries. If they encountered any disasters, they had to rely on Delong to give aid. No one dared to be disrespectful in front of Delong's emperor. Not to mention, even if the emperor of Delong found a reason to take one of their lives, they didn't dare to say anything. Thankfully, the generations of emperors of Delong were not tyrannical. So these years, the subordinate countries had relatively peaceful days. But if they really made the emperor angry, other than the fall of their country, they had no other road to walk. Chu Qingju was also aware the atmosphere wasn't good and said, "Why did Emperor come over?" "Jin heard you came to walk in the garden and came to look." He Heng's tone softened greatly. He glanced at Chu Qingju and saw her expression was normal, and not angry due to the actions of the Princess of Jing before he smiled and added, "Jean will wait to eat the noon meal with you." When the foreign of Dongyu's envoy heard this, she couldn't help but feel disdain towards Dairong. The Emperor and Empress of Delong were in a harmonious relationship, but this Dairong princess was greedy and vain, wanting to enter the Hogong of Delong. It really was both stupid and shameless. Right now, she was a princess of Jing, so the Empress was still courteous to her. If she became one of the Feipin of the Hogong, with the weak strength that Jing had, if the Empress wanted to sort her out, the Empress would not have the slightest concern while doing so. Just now, Xia has heard something very touching from the Princess of Jing. Is the Emperor interested in listening? Chu Qingju looked cheerfully at He Hong. After Xia heard it, Xia was extremely shocked. The successor for the country of Jing has already been settled. Due to the separation of genders, Jian and the Princess of Jing have nothing to discuss. He Hong put down the teacup, speaking icily, Your Highness Princess, if your country has something to discuss with my Delong, then please let your country's crown princess to have an audience. Emperor, this matter has nothing to do with state matters. Dai Rong looked at the frigid eyes of the Emperor of Delong. She already felt regret inside, but since the words had been spoken, she had to continue. It's this one that is in love with Emperor, and begs for Emperor to take pity. Chu Qingju's eyebrows jumped, and she raised a teacup to hide the corners of her lips that rose up. Jin heard that the country of Jing is extremely liberal. Seeing the princess today, it does live up to the rumors. No pity was found in He Hong for the beauty of Dai Rong and her humble posture. He looked at her and said, The love of the princess, Jean appreciates, but Jean is only in love with the Empress and has no intentions of taking another into the Hogong. This one doesn't beg to be able to receive the Emperor's favor, but only to be able to serve Emperor. Dai Rong's eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at He Hong. Is that also not possible? There are countless women in the world in love with Jean. So does Jean have to take pity and take them into the Hogong? He Hong's voice became forceful. If Jean did so, it is not beneficial to oneself nor the person Jean is in love with. Jean appreciates the intentions of the princess, but asks princess not to mention this matter again in the future. If the words were spoken more clearly, it would be, There's many women that like me in the world, but do I have to take all of them into the palace? Isn't that disgusting myself? Dai Rong didn't think that when she had said those words, the Emperor would so ruthlessly reject her. He even compared her to other vulgar women, as though she wasn't different from other women. She almost didn't dare to look at the faces of the other foreign of the envoys, because even without looking, she knew that they were laughing at her inside. Because the husbands of these women lost their focus after seeing her and fawned over her. So these women were jealous of her and hated her. Emperor, the Crown Prince of Jing asks for an audience. His Highness Chang Wang asks for an audience. Qian Changxian seemed to have not seen this farce and with a peaceful expression walked over, disregarding Dai Rong on the way who was still kneeling on the ground. The Crown Prince of Jing? He Hong glanced at Dai Rong. With a dark face, he responded, Let the Crown Prince of Jing return. Tell him if the country of Jing still wants Delong to continue to support them, then to show sincerity. Jin doesn't lack for women, and even more, isn't interested in the women of Jing. Also, tell SID to wait in the imperial study for Jin. Jin will be there shortly. Those words were like a heavy slap to Dai Rong's face. She didn't dare to think when the words reached the country of Jing, how the citizens would think of her, and didn't dare to imagine if the country of Jing was neglected by Delong due to her, how bad the situation would be. If that's the case, then Ming He, continue leading these honored guests through the garden. Ben Gong should be returning to the palace. Chu Qingju smiled as she stood, telling He Hong, Since Emperor has other matters, then go early. Xia will wait for you to return to eat. All right, Jean will be quick. He Hong lowered his head slightly at the envoy's foreign before leaving with a procession of attendants behind him. From beginning to end, he didn't look again at Dai Rong. Chu Qingju walked in front of Dai Rong, smiling as she said, Princess, please stand. The Emperor is always like this. Hope the princess doesn't mind. This one doesn't dare. Dai Rong felt that even her bones were cold. She trembled with fear as she bowed to Chu Qingju, respectfully sending off Empress. Chu Qingju nodded and took Mujin's hands as she turned and walked away. The foreign of the envoys watched as the Emperor and Empress left, then scornfully looked at Dai Rong. One of the foreign shook her head, remarking, Aya, such a pity. A few others followed in laughing. The sound of laughter passed into Dai Rong's ears, piercing and nasty, but she was helpless. Chapter 117 The Lioness from Hudong roars sometimes. Rumors spread very quickly, such as the new rumor of the love and hate between Dairong Princess and Jiayu Emperor. The main idea was that Dairong Princess coveted the prosperity of Dalong, and not wanting to return to the poor country of Jing, tried all she could to become one of the emperor's Fei-Qin. Even more extreme was that Dairong Princess recommended herself in front of the emperor and empress, but who knew that she was rejected multiple times by the emperor. Due to her actions, the emperor became dissatisfied with the country of Jing and even rejected the request from the crown prince of Jing for an audience. There were others that said it was previously Dairong Princess who targeted the empress and the honorable officials because she wanted to enter the palace as Fei, so she specially spread rumors to blight the empress' reputation. In the subconsciousness of the people in the Jing city of Dalong, they looked down at the kind of small country that was Jing. Previously, when they gossiped about how exceptional Dairong Princess was, no one ever said that Dairong Princess was better than the empress. They were only speculating that the emperor wanted something fresh and fancied Dairong Princess. When what had happened in the imperial palace reached the ears of the people of Dalong, there was an explosion. The princess of Jing was shameless. The emperor didn't even want the princess when she recommended herself. She couldn't compare to a finger of the empress. Maybe she had nothing inside and wanted to grab onto their Dalong. Furthermore, others started to say that this princess of Jing had ulterior motives and wanted to enter the imperial palace of Dalong to give birth to a son and take Dalong's throne, to conquer Dalong's lands. When Tu Air, wearing the attire of the country of Jing, came back to the guest palace from the outside, his face was extremely nasty. He angrily burst into Jiao Xiangyuan and saw Dairong venting her temper at a maid. He shouted, "You still have the time to be angry. Our Jing has been completely humiliated by you. Don't shout at me, you aren't the ruler of Jing yet." Dairong had been embarrassed by He Hong and hadn't calmed down. After hearing Tu Air use a critical tone whilst speaking to her, the embarrassment inside turned into anger. "Don't think that because you are now the crown prince, you can order me around. It's too early for that. I don't want to order you around." Tu Air angrily kicked aside the bench in front of him, pointing at Dairong, demanding, "But think of what you have done since you came into Dalong's Jing city. Has the prosperity of Dalong really blinded your eyes?" "Yes, what's wrong if I'm blinded by Dalong's prosperity?" Dairong defended with red eyes. "I am the most beautiful woman of Jing, the most favored daughter of mother. Why can't I live the most luxurious life? The Fei-Pin of Dalong aren't as beautiful as me. Why can't I enter the palace?" "Because the empress is stronger than you," Tu Air shouted. Seeing his Mimi refusing to change, his voice was frigid as he continued, "I already told you. The imperial couple of Dalong are deeply in love. The Fei-Pin in the Hogong is nothing more than decorations. Comparing yourself to the Fei-Pin, that means you also know that you can't compare to Dalong's empress. Where can I not compare with her?" Dairong was furious, her voice growing in pitch. "Because she's from Dalong's nobility? You're wrong. The empress isn't Dalong's nobility." Tu Air scornfully looked at his Mimi, who thought herself clever. "When you and the Qin clan allied to scheme against the empress, didn't you ask about the empress' birth? The empress' mother died early. Her father and stepmother were not loving and have been demoted and lost their home. Her family is a stain on her. But even so, the emperor treats her the same, even to the point that on the coronation decree, he wrote that the empress was peerless in the world, and to have the empress was a blessing from the heavens. But you, where did you get the confidence to think you were better than the empress?" Dairong shook her head as she rejected, "No, the Qin family said that the emperor treats the empress well only because of the Tian family, so it's impossible. The Tian family has a good reputation, but no real power. All they have was given to them by the emperor. Did you think that Dalong's emperor is a useless and stupid ruler?" Tu Air snorted, "My pitiful Mimi, you were tricked by the Qin family." Dairong froze. A beat later, she looked in disbelief at Tu Air. "Why do you know so much about Dalong? Did he already scheme for the position of crown prince beforehand? So that's why he knew so much about Dalong? You are finally smart for once." Tu Air saw that she had finally reacted and smiled as he walked in front of her. "I'm not like you. so spoiled by mother that I can't distinguish important matters from other ones. I understand better than you what is called circumstances, what is putting effort on crucial matters. Therefore, you lost, my pitiful Mimi. Dairong staggered. For what seemed to be the first time, she looked at her useless and average Gidge, but after looking at the other's slightly smiling face, she couldn't say anything. In Tianqi Palace, Chu Qingju smiled as she looked at the men and women kneeling by her feet. One of those in a worn sky-blue robe was a woman she was familiar with. She played with a jade scepter in her hands and sighed, lamenting, "Ben Gong hadn't thought that your Qin family was also involved in the rumors around Jing. If it wasn't for the Emperor's investigation, perhaps Ben Gong would still be in the dark." Speaking thus far, she turned to smile at He Hung sitting by her side. Bai Lu at least was jolie for 2 years with Ben Gong. The Qin family is too ruthless. If the Empress wants to kill or torture, you don't need to say these things. Before Qin Bai Lu could finish, her mouth was covered by a matron beside her. The matron kowtowed with a pale face. This criminal woman hasn't taught her daughter properly. Please, Emperor and Empress, forgive her. Chu Qingju watched as Qin Foreign kowtowed to plead for her daughter, yet Qin Bai Lu was still staring at her with a face full of hatred. She couldn't help but sigh. Qin Bai Lu, Ben Gong just doesn't understand why you would hate Ben Gong. Ever since we met for the first time, it was always you who deliberately made things difficult for Ben Gong. When has Ben Gong ever schemed against you? Qin Bai Lu took away her mother's hand and smiled scornfully. It's natural that you don't understand why I hate you. But that year, if Xindi hadn't suddenly changed his decision when he decreed the marriages, our positions would be switched. The person sitting would be me. The person kneeling at the bottom would be you. By this time, the members of the Qin family were so frightened. Their faces were the color of dirt. Qin Foreign didn't dare to stop her daughter's mouth anymore, and could only tremble as she knelt at the side. When Chu Qingju heard something this hilarious, she instantly laughed out loud. She didn't have any more interest in talking with Qin Bai Lu. How strange was her brain that she would push all the misfortunes onto her. Chu Qingju did not believe that she herself had such great abilities. Or was it also her who'd ordered He Yuan to divorce Qin Bai Lu? How Xindi decreed the marriage, it was Xindi who made the decision. Could she have forced Xindi to make a decision? Once, Jin only thought that the present Qin family was just vulgar, but didn't think that they even didn't have no brains at all. He Hung, who had been silent the entire time, glared icily at Qin Bai Lu. Just a thing like you dares to compare to Empress, it is laughable. But that year, if Xindi didn't marry her to Emperor, then she would be Rue Wang Fei. Even if I couldn't enter Emperor's eyes, she wouldn't be your woman. Qin Bai Lu's smile carried hate and insanity. Do you think that I'm the only person like this? You're wrong. Even He Yuan is regretful about the decreed marriage. Right now, he's thinking about Emperor's good Empress. By now, the members of the Qin family wanted to strangle Qin Bai Lu. If it wasn't for the foreign of the head of the family, who was strong in her conduct, they wouldn't have tolerated a divorced woman living in their ancestral home. If they knew beforehand that she would say such insane things, do insane things, even if they had to start a conflict, they would have sent her away rather than let her drag down the entire clan. He Heng's face was frigid as ice. No man was willing to hear about how his beloved woman was being thought of by another man. Furthermore, this man had nearly taken over his position. Have you ever heard of destiny? Chu Qingju calmly looked at Qin Bai Lu, as though she was looking at a stray dog. You said that Xindi changed the partners that we were decreed marriage to. That means, in Xindi's heart, I was the person most suited to Emperor. I am the woman fated for the Emperor. You can be jealous of Ben Gong, hate Ben Gong. Ben Gong just received the Emperor's love. What can you do to me? Qin Bai Lu had pushed all of their conflicts onto He Yuan. Then, Chu Qingju would purposefully distort it into Qin Bai Lu being jealous of her receiving the Emperor's affections. The two matters seemed to be the same matter, but the feeling it gave others was quite different. She wanted He Hung to know. The person she wanted to capture was him. The person she paid attention to was him. Only like this would there be no danger left hidden. It would even increase the trust and affection He Hung had towards her. Even the heavens helped Bin Gong. What do you have that can compare to Bin Gong? Chu Qingju turned to look at He Hong. As expected, she saw that he was already smiling. She glared at him, mouthing womanizer, before turning to declare at Qin Bailu, "You are discontent that you lost to Bin Gong, and cooperated with the Princess of Jing to purposefully spread rumors to malign the reputations of me and the officials of Delong. Such malicious aims. It's no wonder that even the heavens helped Bin Gong become the woman of the emperor. If you had become the empress of Delong, wouldn't have the world fallen into chaos?" You. Qin Bailu hadn't thought Chu Qingju would give such a speech. She opened her mouth to start cursing, but Qin Foran by her side unexpectedly threw a heavy slap on her face, throwing her onto the ground. "Shut up." Qin Foran sobbed. "You faithless, unfilial daughter. Do you want to kill our entire family?" Other than the crying of Qin Foran, there were no other sounds in the hall. Qin Bailu covered her face, not looking at her own mother, but at the emperor and empress sitting in front of her, her eyes full of hate. Grabbing out the sharp silver hairpin out of her hair, she suddenly stood and rushed towards Chu Qingju. Nyang nyang. On the side, Mu Jin was so frightened that she threw herself from behind Chu Qingju to halfway across Chu Qingju. There was a sound of porcelain breaking, and then she heard a smothered grunt from nearby. Then the entire hall started to make a racket. Raising her head in puzzlement, she saw Qin Bailu lying on the side in a sorry state, the emperor in front of the empress, one of the corners of his robe creased. "Emperor, are you all right?" Chu Qingju stood, her face fearful as she examined He Hong from top to toe. She released a breath, and then in a voice filled with anger, she shouted, "What are you doing? There's so many people. What are you doing in front of me?" The entire hall instantly became silent. All those that were shocked, that had been pushing Qin Bailu down, been asking for mercy. At one point, it was as though their necks were being strangled, so that they were unable to make a sound. "There's so many people in the hall. Who let you go in front of me, showing off how long your legs are? Do you not have regard for your life? Who needed you to save me? I'm not an idiot. Would I have just sat for her to stab? Do you have brains?" Mu Jin stared with wide eyes and mouth at the empress, flipping out. As she watched the emperor unconsciously step back as the empress ranted at him, her shoulders couldn't help but shake as she swallowed. At the side, Qian Changxian, Ming He and the others also stood with dumbstruck eyes. Who had seen the empress be so valiant? Who had even seen the empress scold the emperor? As the personal attendants of the emperor, they should stop the finger that the empress was poking onto the emperor's chest, should reproach the empress for her disrespectful conduct, but, for some reason, they didn't dare speak, and didn't dare to even breathe loudly. "Go away." Chu Qingju kicked aside the head of the Qin family who had been kneeling at the very front, scolding. "They all said your Qin family is an educated family, but look at what you've done. No sense of propriety, uncivilized conduct, disloyal, and immoral. Calling the Qin family an educated family, it brings shame to the word educated. Qin Bailu's outrageousness, it was all because of how you all spoiled her." After the Qin family was criticized, they finally managed to react. All of them banged their heads on the ground, begging for the emperor to spare their lives. For their family to have someone who tried to kill the empress, that was a serious crime worthy of killing off their 9 generations. "Qingju." He Hung reached out to hold Chu Qingju's hands and discovered her hands were slightly trembling. He gave an ingratiating smile. "Don't be angry, don't be angry. Anger is bad for your health." Chu Qingju pushed away his hand, directly sitting back on the chair. She picked up a teacup and lowered her head to drink, not looking at him again. Qian Changxian and Ming He silently retracted their left foot, which they had mustered up the courage to extend out. Since even the emperor who had been scolded was full of smiles, as servants, what could they say? But the empress when she was angry was really too frightening. Not even the roars of the lioness from Hedong could compare. The daughter of Qin family is of ill conduct and dared to kill the emperor and empress. Heaven itself will not tolerate such behavior. Capital punishment will occur in 3 days. He Hung saw Chu Qingju was refusing to acknowledge him and sat down beside her, ordering in an icy voice. The Qin family didn't teach their daughter well, reckless and dared to slander empress and officials of court. All are to be jailed and sentenced at a later date. Spare us, Emperor. Before the members of the Qin family could plead for mercy, others covered their mouths and dragged them down. As for Qin Bailu, who tried to kill Chu Qingju, she had been kicked unconscious by He Hung and didn't stir when she was dragged off. Leave. He Hung looked at the interior of the hall and waved his hand. After everyone else had left, he gathered Chu Qingju in his arms. Don't be angry. I know that you were worried about me. Who's worried about you? Chu Qingju pushed him. Seeing that it was futile, she didn't waste any more energy, allowing him to embrace her. A silver hairpin, even if it entered the body, wouldn't be fatal. Furthermore, as I once said to you, I practiced martial arts. Would I have no way of dealing with a woman? He Hung gently patted her back. You already scolded me, so don't be angry, all right? What would have happened if it hit your organs? Chu Qingju frowned as she declared, I don't want to be a widow so young. All right, I know I was wrong. Don't be angry. Let's go see Tun Tun. He's certainly missing us. Even though he had been scolded, He Hung felt happy. If it wasn't out of concern for him, based on Qingju's normal behavior, she wouldn't have acted so inappropriately. It was somewhat useless point, but this feeling was still really refreshing. All of you take care to control your mouths. Qian Changexan looked at the palace maids and Tai Jian who'd came out of the hall. Even if they were all close attendants of the emperor and empress, he still had to say the words. If there is the slightest leak of what happened, you don't need what's on your necks anymore. Everyone gave their agreement. Mu Jin looked with trepidation at the hall behind her and couldn't resist wiping the fine sweat on her forehead. Empress was really very amazing. Chapter 118. The Qin family was imprisoned, and the eldest daughter of the Qin family, who had once been Rui Wangfei, was decreed to be beheaded. Many people were speculating that this outcome, in addition to the fact that Qin Bailu had tried to kill the empress, was related to the previous rumors that had been spread throughout Jing. But disregarding all that, it was true that the conduct of the Qin family in recent years had gradually lost the literary and scholarly style of the educated families. There were even some storytellers who said that the present head of the Qin family was a shame on the ancestors of the Qin clan. Some reminisced on the conduct of the Qin Shi in the past. When they returned, they used the matter of the Qin family to teach their descendants, so they did not walk the same road as the Qin family. When Dai Rong heard that Qin Bailu was to be publicly beheaded, she was so scared that she didn't dare to step outside. More than anyone, she knew as to what had really happened. In the beginning, when she and Qin Bailu had plotted to wreck the reputation of the empress, Qin Bailu had told her many things about the Hogong of Delong. She hadn't thought that this matter would be uncovered so quickly and that Qin Bailu, the mastermind, couldn't even keep her own life. On the day of Qin Bailu's execution, the autumn air was refreshing and many came out to watch. But until the moment just before she was executed, no one had come to send her off. She looked blankly at her surroundings and suddenly saw a man on a white horse behind the crowds. She stilled, tears suddenly streaming out of her dull eyes. At 13, her heart had moved for this man. At 15, she had married him. At 17, she had been divorced by him. At the moment before death, the one she saw was still him. The black cloth covered her eyes. She twisted her head, wanting to have one more glance at him. In the end, she couldn't escape the executioner blocking her eyes. She heard the sound of cursing and mockery. Even though she concentrated, she didn't hear his voice. That year at the palace banquet, if she didn't encounter him, that would have been good. The only thing to blame was that at that time, she was too young, and that the stunning beauty of He Yuan had taken her time. Maybe, who she really hated wasn't Chu Qingju or Chu Yusu. All her hate, it really came from discontent, the discontent she had towards him. If a person could live their life again, she would become a normal woman, marry a normal man. Either rich or poor, but at least she could receive a portion of feelings that belonged to her. Just like Chu Qingju, who had a man that protected her, and someone she could rely on for an entire lifetime. Its time proceed. The noon gold sun shone off the blade the executioner raised, scattering bits of silver light. The brawny man took a mouthful of liquor and blew it over the large blade. Then he slowly raised it and swung down hard. A smile appeared at the corner of Qin Bai Lu's lips, as though she once again saw the bright youth at the palace banquet. Then, the world plunged into darkness. The hand that He Yuan held the reins with tightened and then slowly relaxed. He pulled on the reins to turn the horse, not looking at the executioner's platform. He gave a sigh, ordering, "He Fu heir, get someone to bury her properly." When people were executed, if there was no family to take their corpse, they would be thrown into a mass burial ground in the end. Although he didn't have feelings for her, and in the end, there was only mutual dislike. He Yuan hadn't reached the stage where he could see his former woman die without a coffin. He Fu heir saw his master's expression wasn't well and hurriedly indicated for the people behind him to collect Qin Bai Lu's body. "Wang Yi, the sun is fierce right now. Let's return to the Fu." He Yuan raised an eyebrow at him. "Let's go." He Fu heir rushed up to take hold of the reins, guiding the horse in the direction of the Jun Wang Fu. When he was going to turn around a corner, he couldn't resist turning back to look at the executioner's platform that was now cleared of the crowd. A person executed at noon, after being shone at by such a strong sun, even the soul might have disappeared. But attempting to kill the empress, she really had courage. No wonder the emperor would give out such a decree. She really did it to herself. It was lucky that Wang Yi had divorced her a long time ago. Otherwise, even the Jun Wang Fu would have been affected by her. Dai Rong didn't dare to go to the place where Qin Bai Lu had been executed. Hearing that Qin Bai Lu's corpse had been collected by people from Rue Jun Wang Fu, she sat restlessly in her room. If someone walked outside her room, she became so scared that she would tremble. The emperor would even order to execute a daughter of a noble family like Qin Bai Lu. If he found evidence of her participating in the rumors, what would be her outcome, and would the country of Jing also be involved? She now regretted working together with Qin Bai Lu. How dumb was she to believe the words of a woman who had been divorced by the imperial house? After taking a drink of cold tea to suppress the terror in her heart, as the teacup left her lips, Dai Rong saw her maid push open the door and come in with a face full of panic to report, "Princess, His Majesty the Emperor of Delong summons you and Crown Prince." The teacup in her hand dropped to the floor. Dai Rong stood up in fright. Through the doorway, she could see a Taijian of Delong standing outside. She staggered and forced out a smile. "Wait for me to change. Please, Princess, don't waste time." Emperor and Empress are both very busy. Princess should hurry to enter the palace. Qian Chang'exin walked inside, his face expressionless as he whipped the duster in his hand. "Princess, please." Dai Rong recognized him as the personal Taijian of the Emperor of Delong and didn't dare to offend him. She forced a smile and followed Qian Chang'exin out of the room. When she went outside, she saw Tuer was also wearing his normal clothes, his expression unwell. "Crown Prince, Princess, please." Qian Chang'exin raised an eyebrow. "Don't make the emperor wait." Seeing Qian Chang'exin's attitude, the uneasiness Dai Rong had inside grew even more until she couldn't seem to breathe. When they had entered the imperial palace and they followed Qian Chang'exin and the others into Tianqi Palace, Dai Rong could hear the sounds of the emperor and empress talking from outside the door. After Qian Chang'exin went in to report, the sounds of conversation stopped. She walked in amidst the cold stares of the palace maids and Taijian in the surroundings. Chu Qingju was playing with a kaleidoscope. Seeing Dai Rong and Tuer enter, she handed to the kaleidoscope to a palace maid and resumed a proper sitting posture. After the two made their greetings, she only drank tea silently, allowing He Hong to converse with the two of them. Jin heard that Hugua Princess was very close to Qin Shi. What does Princess have to say? He Hong looked coldly at Tuer and DeLong. Just one sentence was enough to frighten the two into kneeling on the ground. He looked at the two people kneeling in front of him, his expression still ugly. In the past, the country of Jing was one of the subordinate countries that DeLong put importance on, but your conduct has made Jian extremely disappointed. When Tu-erh heard the words, his face became scared. He quickly made a full bow, replying, "The honored His Majesty the Emperor. My Jing's loyalty to you can be seen by the heavens. Please, Your Majesty, don't lightly believe the rumors. Whether or not it's just rumor, both of you should know very well." Hung thought about the rumors that had gone through the city of Jing and what Qin Bailu had done, his brow furrowing. Jin only wanted to hear how the country of Jing will give my DeLong an explanation. Tu-erh's forehead already had sweat forming. He gritted his teeth and gave a kowtow. "Your Majesty, we are willing to increase our tribute by 2/10 to show our loyalty to DeLong." "My DeLong doesn't lack for those kind of things," Hung coldly sneered. If Zhen's empress and the court officials had been harmed by the rumors, even if the country of Jing was flattened, it still wouldn't calm Zhen's anger. "Please, Your Majesty, don't be angry." Tu-erh's sweat slid down his face to land on the ground, but he didn't dare to raise a hand to wipe. He went forward 2 steps, begging, "Qin's sister is ignorant. Please, Your Majesty, have mercy. Please have mercy." Chu Qingju looked at the sorry state of Tu-erh. Even Tu-erh was calling himself a subject in front of them. It could be seen that Tu-erh had no other solutions left. She hadn't wanted to join this matter, but Hung had to call her over. Reality proved it. She didn't like seeing others kowtowing to her. "Your Majesty, all the wrongs are this subject's wrongs. It was this subject that was greedy for the wealth of DeLong, and has nothing to do with the people of Jing. Please, Your Majesty, spare the people of Jing." Dai Rong is willing to endure all of the punishment. Dai Rong thought about how poor the country of Jing was. They couldn't bear the pressure of a tribute that was 2/10 higher. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she had to confess that she had done something wrong. "Please, Emperor, spare Jing. Jing is a poor place. Our people have no more strength to endure war and increased yearly tributes." Hearing that, Chu Qingju looked again at Dai Rong. At this critical time, this Huguo princess wasn't stupid to the bone and finally knew how to protect her people. In reality, how many people in the world could resist the temptation of wealth and prosperity? Hung looked indifferently at the pair of siblings, entirely unmoved. This was between countries. His priority was protecting the interests of his country before he had the time to divide some sympathy to other people. He was the emperor of DeLong, not the emperor of the country of Jing. Their standpoints were different, so how would there be sympathy? Since Princess knows that the country of Jing cannot stand Zhen's rage, then why do such a daring thing? Hung threw what had been discovered in front of the 2 siblings. "If Zhen ordered the army to Jing, it is for your crimes, Huguo Princess." Dai Rong didn't dare to look at those things, only fearfully begged. "This subject was possessed. This subject is willing to be punished. Please, Emperor, spare the people of Jing." She didn't want to think about it. If DeLong really sent their army, how would Mother and the people of DeLong look at her? Would it be disappointment? Anger? Or would it be hatred? "Emperor, this subject is willing to use her life to apologize for the offense. Please, Emperor, spare the innocent people." Dai Rong knelt with a straight body, looking at the exceptional yet ruthless emperor. There was no sign of the initial seductiveness on her face now. She looked at Chu Qingju, who had been silently drinking tea, and walked towards her on her knees. Dai Rong gave a heavy kowtow. This subject was ill-mannered and offended the empress. "Please, Empress, give punishment." Chu Qingju looked down at Dai Rong for losing her composure in her greed for prosperity, was offended by her, and Qin Bailu for spreading rumors to slander her. But right now, Dai Rong seemed to have given everything up and became the country of Jing's Huguo princess, willing to use her death to make up for her mistakes rather than harm her people. People who knew their wrongs were more soothing to the eyes than people who stubbornly didn't change even into death. The most important factor was that Dai Rong was a princess of the country of Jing, and not one of DeLong's citizens. One Jing was easy to deal with, but if other subordinate countries started to rebel due to this matter, then even if it wasn't hard for DeLong to deal with all the countries, it still wasn't a good thing. An unnecessary war happening to the common people, it was a disaster. "Emperor, Why don't we send a letter to the Queen of Jing about the matter and let her give an explanation to our DeLong? Chu Qingju put down the teacup and opened. The matter has already passed. I don't want a war to start because of me. He Hung sighed. But if the rumors had really caused bad consequences, then what? I know the intentions of the emperor. Chu Qingju smiled. I'm a lazy person. I don't like to care about what's happening at court. But I know one thing. The people are the ones who suffer in wars. A beat later, He Hung nodded. Jin understands what you wish for. This matter will be handed to the Queen of Jing, so she may give an explanation to Da Long. The historian at the side recorded the actions of the emperor and empress, the 10th month of the first year of Jiayu. The princess of Jing offended the empress. The emperor was angry and wished to raise an army against Jing. The empress urged against, saying that the people suffered in war. The emperor heard this, and the anger disappeared. /N Chapter 119. The song ends. The people leave at the end of the 10th month. The weather was already very cold. Each of the subordinate countries were preparing for their journey back to their own countries, so before departure, De Long held a banquet and invited all the envoys from the subordinate countries. He Hung didn't mention the matter of the country of Jing again in front of Chu Qingju. She didn't ask either. There wasn't a rule in De Long that the Hogong couldn't participate in politics, but she was very clear of her own limitations. A person who couldn't even finish memorizing the art of war. It was better if they didn't go out into the world to wreck the people. She had been a manager in her previous life. She knew how to use the desires of other people, knew how to grasp another to benefit herself. This was the little smarts that belonged to her. But she was self-aware and knew what she was good at and what she wasn't. Just like when Feng Zijin took advantage of Han Liangdi to harm her, she went along with the plan and used it to take care of a woman who was constantly scheming against her. Shu Taifei had already moved out of the Hogong. The two empress dowagers were at odds with her, so how could they allow Shu Taifei's people to remain in the palace? The fact that Shu Taifei had been implicated in the matter was due her scheming in the background, but the greatest influence came from the two empress dowagers. They simply used Feng Zijin and Han Liangdi to pull Shu Taifei into the mud, to make her life worse than death. She had guessed the intentions of the two empress dowagers, so she allowed Feng Zijin to pull the crime onto her body, and then watched as she dug her own grave and lost her life. What person, after they developed, would still tolerate their opponent who'd once bullied them? History had the story of the human swine IA. Here, there was the living lesson that was Shu Taifei. As she sat in the phoenix carriage and passed by the pavilion Han Liangdi once sang in, Chu Qingju tightened her arms around Tun Tun. Her eyes steadily became calm. She wouldn't allow herself to fall to the end that Shu Taifei got. The Empress has arrived. Passing through the main doors of Luanhe Hall, the vermilion phoenix robe slid silently across the carpet. She disregarded the envoys kneeling on both sides with the officials. Walking to the bottom of the 9 jade steps, she bowed to He Hung. Greetings to the Emperor. Quickly rise. He Hung stood from the dragon chair. Seeing Chu Qingju walk up the jade stairs, he held her hand to sit down. Chu Qingju turned to look at the people still kneeling, announcing, "Everyone, please rise." "Thanks, Emperor." "Thanks, Empress." Chu Qingju smiled and tilted her head. After the people stood, she took away her gaze and turned to stare at He Hung. She continued, "Having made everyone wait, Ben Gong will self-penalize with a cup." She raised the plum wine in front of her, and using her sleeve to hold the wine cup, she threw her head back to drink. No one really dared to let the Empress drink a cup as penalty like that, and followed in raising their own cups to drink. The Emperor had arrived first, but he wasn't angry at the Empress' actions. They don't have to meddle in other people's business even more. Zhen's son was just crying in Fu Shou Palace. The Empress had no other way but to turn back. He Hung explained with a smile, "It's the duty of parents. Once the child is crying, we can't sit still." Fu Shou Palace. That was the place that Shengmu Empress Dowager lived. His Highness Imperial Son was crying unstoppably over there. Did something happen? If it had just been normal crying, would the Empress make a special trip there? Everyone felt that something was fishy about the matter. However, after seeing that the emperor and empress looked normal, they presumed that it wasn't a major incident and smiled as they took up the topic of child-rearing. Even the officials who didn't interact with their own children usually suddenly seemed to become a multi-talented house husband, as though they had personally raised their children. The mood of the banquet instantly rose. The dancing and songs continued. People toasted and changed cups. It was very harmonious. He Hung asked quietly at Chu Qingju's ear, "Are the two empress dowagers all right?" Just a shock. Chu Qingju raised a wine cup. She had a smile, but her words were cold. The people of Muhu were cautious. Those things had been found before they could get near Tun Tun. This person of Shu Gui Taifei hid too deeply. Even the two Muhu hadn't found them out. Originally, when she had been preparing to travel to the farewell banquet at Wanhe Hall, she had met Ding Mama of Fu Shou Palace right as she came out of the door to notify her of the matter. Immediately, she lost interest in Wanhe Hall and turned to travel to Fu Shou Palace. The two empress dowagers were women who were skilled, and they'd quickly found the person, even uncovering the fact that Shu Gui Taifei was behind it. She hadn't thought that even though Shu Gui Taifei had been sent to the imperial tomb, she was discontented a hawk to have planned such a major attack before leaving. What were the things found? He Heng's face became dark. Some dirty blood. It must have been the blood stains of a person seriously ill. But I'm afraid that Shu Gui Taifei's person didn't know that anything Tun Tun uses. I'll get them to inspect even a handkerchief before usage. Chu Qingju smirked. I heard that Shu Gui Taifei's life at the imperial tomb is extremely lavish. Since she's so dissatisfied, I have already ordered for them to decrease her allowance, and that each year except for the Mid-Autumn Festival, no one is allowed to disturb her peace. When a woman gets old, if her temper is still so fiery, then she needs peaceful days to calm her emotions. I think that Shu Gui Taifei will soon know how good peaceful days are. A destitute lifestyle, the people were all dumb and deaf. She wanted to see how Shu Gui Taifei will live in the future. If she died, that was letting her off too easy. If she couldn't make Shu Gui Taifei understand what regret was, how would she be at ease? He Hung heard the meaning in her words and didn't expand further on the topic. He knew just how fierce women were when they were protecting their children, just like in the past when Muhu had protected him using every scheme so that no one could hinder them. To hear the imperial words and see the honored Your Majesty the Emperor, and to see the prosperity of Delong, it wasn't a wasted journey. Envoy of Duo Han, Ajika wishes for Delong to flourish for 1,000 years. As the envoy for Duo Han, Ajika knew he wasn't favored by Delong, so he put his own status very low when he entered the city of Jing this time in hopes that the people of Delong believed that Duo Han was sincere in their allegiance to Delong. Many thanks to Ajika Daren's lucky words. He Hung raised a wine cup towards Ajika and took a sip of wine. Ajika saw him drink the wine he toasted and his face became joyful. Chun represents the people of Duo Han and toasts you. The loyalty of my Duo Han to Delong can be witnessed by the heavens. He threw his head back and drained the cup. Then he flipped the cup. Not a drop spilled out. If Duo Han betrays the oath, then let the heavens send down disasters to punish us. Zhen receives the loyalty of the people of Duo Han. He Hung smiled as he finished off the wine in his cup. Zhen will remember Ajika's oath today. After Ajika sat down, he looked smugly at Tu Er and Dai Rong sitting below him. With the actions of this Dai Rong princess beforehand, his Duo Han wasn't the most horrid subordinate country in the hearts of the people of Delong. It seemed that he should be grateful to this beautiful princess. Dai Rong saw the smug smile on Ajika's face, and a grimace appeared on her own. She raised her head to look at the emperor and empress sitting at the top of the 9 jade stairs. It was these two people who made her understand what was really regret, what was fear, and what was prosperity. At last, her gaze landed on He Heng's smiling face. To this young emperor, her heart had really moved. Humane, kind, charismatic, and full of true love for the empress. But it was a pity that the true love didn't belong to her. Tu Er saw his Mimi was still gazing at the emperor of Delong and demanded with a frown, "Mimi, haven't you given up yet?" Dai Rong grimaced. There's no giving up. From beginning to end, he never even properly looked at me. It was this man who made her understand that not everyone loved her. Maybe the reason that the people of the country of Jing loved her that much, aside from her beauty, was her identity. She was a princess of the country of Jing. Even if she might not be the future ruler of Jing, but she was still a hope for the future of Jing. She received their devotions, but what she had wanted was the prosperity of DeLong. If the people of the country of Jing knew of her actions, how disappointed would they be? She should be grateful to the Empress of DeLong. If it wasn't for this exceptional Empress, she might not be able to sit in this hall, and the country of Jing would be expecting the iron hoof of DeLong's stupidity. Once in a lifetime was enough. Her position didn't allow for her to keep being stupid and, even more, continue to make mistakes. Otherwise, the result might be the damnation of Jing. This subject toasts the Honorable Empress a cup and wishes for the Empress and Emperor's love to be stronger than gold and everything be smooth. Dai Rong stood and raised a wine cup at Chu Qingju. This subject is grateful for the Honorable Empress for giving this subject the chance to grow up. Please, Empress, receive this subject's sincere bow. She made a bow towards Chu Qingju that in Jing carried the meaning of goodwill and respect, and then drained the wine. Chu Qingju looked at Dai Rong below. In just a few days, this Huguo princess had rapidly grown up. She couldn't see a hint of the past self. It was like a fragile and spoiled girl had become a strong woman. Not many people could make such a change. Was it Qin Bai Lu's death that shocked her awake? Or was it the lives of the people of the country of Jing that made her understood what was responsibility? But no matter what, Chu Qingju accepted Dai Rong's toast. She smiled and raised a wine cup, responding, "Every person has a time when they are wrong. The crucial part is whether or not they could turn back, if they could understand." Ben Gong hopes for the friendship between DeLong and the country of Jing to continue for a long time, and the people of Jing to live long and secure lives. Many thanks for the lucky words of the Honorable Empress. My Jing, generation after generation, will always be loyal to DeLong. Dai Rong's eyes became red. She knew that this was the Empress promising that DeLong wouldn't send soldiers into Jing. She switched for another cup of wine and unhesitatingly drank it down. On the day the envoys left, the autumn winds were blowing and wild chrysanthemums were blooming all over the suburbs of the city of Jing. Chu Qingju and He Hong stood on the tall city gates, watched as the envoys made a 3-bow 9 kowtow greeting to them before gradually leaving in the carriages. The carriages slowly went further away and disappeared into the horizon. Chu Qingju brushed aside the hair that had been blown free by the wind. She sighed, stating, "The song ends, people leave, flowers blooming over the entire city, so it isn't that lonely." He Hung saw her expression was slightly depressed and held her hand to lead her down off the tower. "Some people leave, some come. It's all good when we are still at the original place." Chu Qingju turned to look at him, a clean smile at the corner of her lips. It was faint, but very real. The Human Swine is the story of the consort Qi. Emperor Gaozu, the founder of the Han dynasty, was extremely favored, and her son a contender for the throne. Consort Qi tried to persuade the emperor many times to crown her son, and her ambitions were well known. Empress Lu was her opponent. In the end, the court supported Empress Lu's son, who succeeded the throne, and Prince Rui had to leave for his own lands as Wang. However, Empress Lu, now Grand Empress Lu, wanted mother and son dead. Her own son, the new emperor, kept his brother, Prince Rui, with him constantly to prevent his mother from putting in poison or assassination attempts, but ultimately failed. Then the Grand Empress chopped off Consort Qi's limbs, took out her eyes, sliced off her ears, and ruined her voice before putting her in a latrine. Chapter 120. Feng seeks Huang. When the plum blossoms of DeLong were just blooming, snow the size of goose feathers began to land in the city of Jing. The entire Jing city was enveloped in a layer of silver silk. Chu Qingju, dressed in a fox skin coat, stood under the leaves and reached out to hold the icy snowflakes. Watching the snow fall, she didn't seem to be as excited as she once had been. It was like anything else beautiful. No matter how beautiful, it was just like normal once one got used to it. She took her hand back and focused on the snowflake on her hand. It did seem to have 6 petals and was extremely beautiful upon inspection. She used a handkerchief to wipe away the snowflake on her hands and grasped a hand pot. It's Rue Wang's wedding tomorrow. Nothing can go wrong with what is to be bestowed tomorrow. Nyang, don't worry. Newbie has already closely inspected them. Mu Jing saw the Empress wasn't trying to catch snowflakes anymore and put up an umbrella to block the flying snowflake for her. In a small voice, she suggested, Nyang, the wind is heavy here. Let's go back. Chu Qingju nodded. She pulled on the red fox skin cape on her body and slowly walked into the vermilion corridors. The palace boots made muffled sounds as they stepped on the stone slabs. She expressionlessly traveled through the long corridors, past a moon door, saw the Taijian that was sweeping the snow, and having finally learned to disregard their distorted backs, and sat down on the comfortable and grand phoenix carriage. Proceed. The phoenix carriage swayed slightly and then started to slowly move. As they traveled through a patch of plum trees, she pushed aside the silk curtain and saw a branch of red plum blossoms peeking out from the walls. She could barely detect the faint scent of the plum flowers. The phoenix carriage slowly proceeded. In her vision, that blooming red plum flower gradually distanced itself, and then it couldn't be seen. She suddenly felt depressed and put down the curtain. For some reason, she suddenly remembered the instant when she first opened her eyes in this world. A painting of red plum blossoms had been hanging on the wall. The writing of the woman at the corner of the art had been graceful and refined, just like the plum flowers in that yard. Not as grand as other flowers, but there was a delicate fragrance. Greetings to the Empress. The speed of the phoenix carriage slowed. Chu Qingju heard a somewhat familiar voice. When she lifted the curtain, she saw a woman bent beside the phoenix carriage. After a second, she finally responded, giving a faint smile and acknowledging, Luo Guipin, please rise. Many thanks to Empress. Luo Yinxiu straightened her body. She didn't stare at Chu Qingju's face, only submissively looking at the ground. It's so cold out. Why isn't Guipin traveling on a step carriage? Chu Qingju looked at the worn fur cape on her body. Her brow furrowed and then she ordered, Huangyang, go take a look in the Department of Household Affairs and see if they slighted Guipin. If someone was reckless enough to shortchange their superiors, then it's 30 blows. Luo Yinxiu bowed again. Thanks for Empress concern. Pinky is fine. Chu Qingju understood the rules of the palace very well. Gaze at the higher-ups and step on the low ones, flattering those who were favored. In the time of Xindi, they even dared to shortchange the Empress, more or less Luo Yinxiu, who had no favor or power. Thinking about it, she said in a slightly heavy voice, the carriage, furnishings, and food that a third-rank Guipin should have, Ben Gong believes the people of the Department of Household Affairs should understand. Huangyang, go tell them. If they can't figure out those things, they don't need to stay in their duties. Yes, Huangyang performed a bow, and then another to Luo Yinxiu before leaving. It's late. I should return to the palace. Guipin should return too. Chu Qingju gazed at Luo Yinxiu's docile manner and put down the curtain, blocking off the gaze Luo Yinxiu raised. The phoenix carriage traveled away. The Yahuan beside Luo Yinxiu, Shu Wan, watched as the carriage became fuzzy in the snow and moved the umbrella over Luo Yinxiu's head, commenting in a small voice, Zhuzi, Empress is still this warm to others. Luo Yinxiu turned her head to look in the direction the phoenix carriage was traveling. Over there was the Tianqi palace of the Emperor and Empress. She gave a slightly indifferent smile and sighed, remarking, if I want to easily live out the rest of my life, the only one I can rely on is the Empress. So, she would deliberately wear old clothing to encounter the Empress at this place so the Empress could understand her circumstances. The days of the Hogong were difficult. It was lucky that she encountered an Empress that was relatively kind. If it was anyone even a bit more callous, she didn't know what her days would be like. The character for happiness was pasted all over Rue Jun Wang Fu. The guests streamed in. Even those Rue Jun Wang had fallen in power, but this marriage had been decreed by the emperor. If they didn't come to congratulate, wouldn't it become embarrassing the emperor? But what they found unexpected was that Rue Junwang didn't refuse any of the toast. After the wedding banquet, he was almost completely drunk. Thankfully, the guests remembered that Rue Junwang was the groom. Along with Cheng Wang's protection, they didn't dare to make it too extreme. He had never been at peace with He Yuan. He watched as He Yuan drank as though it was water, not wine, and scoffed. If he didn't know better, he would have thought his good deity was drinking away his sorrows. He glanced at Lao Asai, who was blocking wine for Lao San, and sighed. Who would have thought that Lao Asai would have become the second proudest person among the four brothers? Seeing the other people didn't dare to force it too much, He picked up the wine pot and held a wine cup as he walked in front of He Yuan, who had drank enough that his cheeks were red. He asked sarcastically, "Sandy, we are brothers. Today is your good day. How about us brothers drink a few cups?" He Yuan carelessly raised his wine cup, smiling and answering, "Deji's wine. Didi has to drink." Finishing, he took over the fine wine pot and wine cup. Pouring a full cup and swallowing it all, he swirled the empty cup and recited, "Lan Ling's wine with tulips, the jade bowl becomes amber. It makes the owner and I drunk, and forget where is home. Today, there is wine and there is drunkenness, Didi toasts Gidge." He hadn't expected that He Yuan was even more blunt than he was. Before he could react, the other had drained another cup. It instantly made him lose interest in forcing him to drink. If the person being forced was even happier than the person doing the forcing, where was the meaning? When others saw the scene, they all assumed that Ning Wang was purposefully forcing Rue Junwang. Thinking of the battles between the two brothers over the years, no one was stupid enough to involve themselves and silently drank. When He Ming saw the scene from the side, for some reason a certain secret rumor came to mind. It said that Sanji had some affections for the Empress. Realizing that he was thinking about something he shouldn't be thinking, He Ming hurriedly shook his head. There hadn't been any relationship between Sanji and Huang Sa, so Sanji wouldn't have any affections for Huang Sa. It was just the two had almost been married, so other people personally slandered them. Seeing that Sanji was totally drunk, He Ming could only support him back to the Hoyuan. The bride's veil hadn't been taken off, the cups of wine hadn't been exchanged. If the groom was so drunk that he was unconscious, then it was too unsightly. He didn't stop He Ming. In waning interest, he watched as He Ming supported the other away and turned to leave Rue Junwang Fu. Looking at the thick layer of snow on the streets outside, he exhaled and said to his attendant behind him, "So uninteresting, let's return." He and Lao San had fought for some many years, but in the end, the throne hadn't landed on either of their heads. Thinking about it this way, it was very ironic. He Yuan supported himself using the door and staggered over to the wedding bed. Looking at the woman with a veil of dragon and phoenix entwined, he took over the stick and took off the veil. His eyes changed and he muttered, "Such beautiful brows." That year on the jade steps under the fireworks, that crimson-clad woman had been also so bright, brows like the sun. Bright that one couldn't resist looking just a few more times. Taking out the wine cups, his drunken eyes were smiling. The arms of the two crossed and his voice was hoarse yet full of satisfied mirth. "Then let us be together for 100 years and not separate even when our hair turns white." Lu Yurong looked at the handsome man smiling at her, and her heart jumped. Her cheeks became flushed. She took the wine cup the other handed over, and as he watched gently, she drained the wine cup. He Yuan reached to push her into his arms, his smile touched yet tender. "So good, so good." Her hand trembled slightly, but in the end, she slowly embraced this man. The snowy night was long yet short, but for her, it was better than imagined. The red candles of Rue Junwang Fu burned for the entire night, just like it was burning a beautiful dream, beautiful yet illusory. In Tianqi Palace, Chu Qingju was laying in He Heng's arms when she suddenly woke up from her dreams. Outside the window, weak light lit up the window silk. Listening to the sound of snow outside, she felt incomparably tranquil, her bed incomparably warm. "Go to sleep." The voice of the man beside her was fuzzy, as though he hadn't woken from his dreams. but his arms familiarly pulled her back in, as though he had done it countless times, practiced and matter-of-fact. Chu Qingju smiled, placing her head on the man's chest and slowly closed her eyes. The second year of Jiayu, the eldest imperial son, was named by the emperor as Yao I. Shi Ming, explaining heaven, had bright, shining, light illuminating. The Shijing style of Kuai also said, the sunrise is bright. Just this name, it was enough to show the expectations of the emperor to His Highness the eldest imperial son. In this world, was there anything more important than light? And then the empress moved out of the rear hall of Tianqi Palace and moved to Kueyuan Palace. Some began to speculate, was the emperor finally going to move his eyes onto the other women in the Hogong? But who knew that the emperor would eat and sleep in Kueyuan Palace? No other woman in the Hogong was favored. The love between emperor and empress became even deeper, almost becoming a legend of Delong about the love between emperor and empress. But right now, the idea wasn't still there. Who knew just how long this deep love of the emperor would continue? Right now, the two empress dowagers in the Hogong didn't express an opinion. Certain senior officials wanted to express their opinions, but didn't dare to provoke the emperor's anger. So the emperor only favoring the empress. No one wanted to say anything. Perhaps the people of the entire world wanted to see how long it would take for this good play of the love between emperor and empress to end. No matter how beautiful a play was, it would always have an ending. They really didn't believe that there was an emperor that was faithful to his love in the world. The emperor and empress who had a love stronger than gold in the previous dynasty, didn't their ending turn out terribly? On the tallest stargazing tower in the palace, Chu Qingju looked at the clear blue sky and reached up to block the blinding sunlight. She suddenly asked, Mu Jin, what do you think that cloud would change into? Mu Jin tilted her head up to look at the white cloud. Before she could respond, she saw the emperor at the bottom stairs below the two. At a glance, she knew he was coming to find the empress. Nyang, the emperor has come. Chu Qingju lowered her head. Watching the man that was hurriedly climbing up the stargazing tower, a smile appeared on her face. Mu Jin looked again at the beautiful pale cloud and thought carelessly, the clouds originally were things that changed constantly. Who knew what it would change into? But that bright sun, it would rise each day and set down like normal. He came up the tower. Looking at the woman dressed in a crimson phoenix robe in the sunlight, he suddenly thought of a poem called Feng Seeks Huang. I saw a beautiful woman. After seeing her, it's unforgettable. If I don't see her each day, the thoughts become crazy. I'm like that Feng bird flying high up in the sky, trying to find the Huang bird in the world. I hope my conduct is matching to yours, so we can hold hands together. If the marriage is not allowed, it's a death sentence for me. The smile of a beauty is unforgettable in this lifetime, a downfall in this lifetime. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.